Warren Fuller thought he was giving me a surprise divorce on our 35th wedding anniversary. He had booked the private room, invited our children, our pastor, our neighbors, even the old business friends who still called him an honorable man. He planned to stand beside a cake that said 35 years of love and hand me an envelope that would end my marriage in front of everyone I loved. But Warren made one mistake. He believed I would break. What he didn't know was that I had found his plan weeks earlier. And by the time he reached into his jacket that night, my divorce papers had already been filed. Before I go on, if you've ever had to smile while your heart was breaking, please like this video. Subscribe if you believe women deserve the truth at any age. And tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Also, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? For 35 years, I was Mrs. Warren Fuller. That was how people knew me at church, at the grocery store, at the dentist's office, and at every summer cookout on Maple Ridge Lane. Not Teresa. Not the woman who once had dreams of her own. Not the young teacher who could calm a room full of second graders with one raised eyebrow. Mrs. Warren Fuller. I used to think that name meant I belonged somewhere. By the time I turned 62, it felt more like a label someone had taped over my mouth. Warren and I lived in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, in a brick 2-story house with white shutters, a wide front porch, and hydrangeas I planted myself 20 years earlier. People always said our house looked peaceful. They didn't know peace can be staged. Every Sunday morning, Warren wore a navy suit to church. He shook hands with the men, kissed cheeks with the women, and placed one careful hand on the small of my back as if he were still devoted to me. Pastor Robert Jenkins often smiled at us and said, 35 years, that's a blessing. I smiled every time. I had learned how. Warren had retired 2 years earlier from his job as a chief financial officer for a regional medical supply company. He liked people to know that title. CFO. He said it with a little pause afterward, like he was waiting for respect to arrive. It always did. He was tall, silver-haired, polished, and calm in public. The kind of man who opened doors, remembered birthdays, and gave practical advice in a voice that made everyone believe he was right. People trusted Warren. That was his gift. And later, I learned that was his weapon. I had been an elementary school teacher before our children were born. I loved that job. I loved the smell of crayons, the crooked handwriting, the way children believed every story could end well if someone kind just stepped in at the right time. Then Laura came along. 2 years later, Michael. At first, I told myself I was only taking a short break. Just a year or two. Just until daycare became easier. Just until Warren's job settled down. Just until the children needed me less. But children do not need you less all at once. They need you differently. And husbands, if you train them long enough, can start needing you like oxygen while still acting as if you are furniture. So I became the one who packed lunches, remembered permission slips, drove to piano lessons, sat in emergency rooms, hosted Thanksgiving-washed baseball uniforms, and kept Warren's shirts pressed for every promotion dinner. When Laura had nightmares, she came to me. When Michael broke his wrist falling off his bike, I held him while Warren filled out insurance forms. When Warren's mother got sick, I drove her to appointments, cooked soft meals, and sat beside her bed, while Warren told people how hard it was on him. I was everywhere. But somehow, when Warren told the story of our life, he had built it alone. Our home, he would say, my career, my retirement plan, the life I provided. At first, I corrected him gently. You mean the life we built, I'd say, with a small laugh. He would smile, but his eyes would not. Of course, Tess. That's what I meant. Tess. He only called me that when he wanted to soften a blade before sliding it in. By the time he retired, our children were grown. Laura Fuller Bennett lived about 40 minutes away with her husband Mark, and their 2 teenage daughters. She had my heart, that girl. Sensitive, observant, always trying to keep everyone from hurting each other. Michael worked in insurance downtown. He was smart, neat, practical, and more like Warren than either of us wanted to admit. He admired his father. He admired success. He admired certainty. And Warren was always certain. I was the emotional one. That was the story. If I asked why a bill was higher than usual, Warren said, "Don't worry your head about it." If I suggested we visit Laura more often, he said, "Don't smother her, Teresa." If I said he had been distant, he sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. There you go again, making everything heavier than it needs to be. After a while, I stopped asking. Not because I agreed. Because loneliness inside a marriage can make a woman very quiet. The house became silent after retirement. That surprised me. I thought having Warren home would bring us closer. Morning coffee together. Walks. Maybe a trip to Maine like we always said we would take. Instead, Warren treated the house like a hotel where I happened to work. He woke early, read financial news on his tablet, and drank coffee without looking up. He played golf on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He had lunch with the guys. He took phone calls in his study with the door closed. And I moved around him like weather, present, useful, unnoticed. The first real change was his phone. For years, Warren left it everywhere. On the kitchen counter, beside his recliner, in the cup holder of the car. He used to ask me to read texts aloud when he was driving. Then one day the screen locked. 6 digits. Not our anniversary. Not Michael's birthday. Not anything I knew. I noticed because I picked it up to wipe crumbs from the counter, and it lit up in my hand like a warning. "New password?" I asked. He reached for it too quickly. "Security update," he said. "Security from who?" He looked at me over his glasses. "Teresa, must everything be a question?" I laughed because that is what women of my generation were trained to do when a man made us feel small in our own kitchens. A few days later, he took a call on the back porch in February. February in Ohio. The man hated cold weather. He complained if the garage was chilly, but there he stood outside in a wool coat phone pressed to his ear, breath fogging the glass door. I watched him from the sink with my hands in warm dishwater. He wasn't talking like he talked to the guys from golf. His shoulders were loose, his head tilted. Once he laughed. Not a big laugh. Worse. A private laugh. The kind I had not heard from him in years. When he came back inside, I asked, "Who was that?" He slipped the phone into his pocket. "Financial advisor." At 8:30 at night, markets don't close just because you're done with dinner. That was Warren. Always an answer ready. Always just sharp enough to make the next question feel foolish. I let it go, but I remembered. Then came the clothes. Warren bought 3 new dress shirts from Nordstrom, pale blue-white and a soft gray that made his eyes look younger. He started trimming his beard more carefully. He ordered new cologne, something expensive and too bold for a man who used to smell like shaving cream and black coffee. One morning, I found him standing in front of the hallway mirror, turning slightly to check the fit of his jacket. "You look nice," I said. He didn't smile. "I've been letting myself go." The words landed strangely. I wanted to ask, "For whom?" Instead, I said, "You've always looked fine." He looked at my reflection, not at me. "That's the problem, Teresa. Fine isn't the same as alive." I stood there in my house slippers and old blue robe holding a basket of folded towels. Alive, as if I were death. That was when I first felt it. Not proof, not even suspicion exactly. Just a thin crack in the life I thought I understood. After that, I started paying attention. Not snooping, not yet. Watching. Warren began saying he had meetings with a financial consultant named Patricia. Then sometimes it was estate planning, sometimes it was tax strategy. Once when I asked whether I needed to be there too, he said no. It's mostly technical. I knew that tone. It meant you wouldn't understand. But that was another thing Warren forgot. I did understand more than he thought. Before I became Mrs. Warren Fuller, I was Teresa Caldwell, daughter of a hardware store owner in Dayton. My father believed girls should know numbers because numbers were where dishonest men liked to hide. By 16, I could balance a register, read vendor invoices, spot a padded bill, and tell when someone was smiling too hard across a counter. Later, when Warren was still climbing, I helped organize his receipts, proofread his reports, and catch errors in spreadsheets he was too proud to admit he had made. He called me Sharp back then. Somewhere along the way, Sharp became sensitive. Helpful became dependent. Loved became tolerated. That is how a woman disappears. Not all at once. One corrected memory at a time. Our friends still believed we had a beautiful marriage. I suppose parts of it had been beautiful. I will not lie about that. Warren and I had danced in the kitchen once. He had cried when Laura was born. He had slept in a hospital chair after my hysterectomy, his hand wrapped around mine. Those memories made the later cruelty harder to name. Because when someone has loved you once, you keep looking for that person inside the stranger they become. I looked for him everywhere. In his face across the breakfast table. In his hand when it brushed mine during prayer. In the way he said, "Good night," without turning toward me. But the man I had married was either gone or he had been wearing a better mask in the beginning. I still don't know which answer hurts less. The week everything began to change. Warren announced we should have a big anniversary party. I nearly dropped my coffee. "A big one?" I asked. 35 years deserves recognition, he said. That alone should have warned me. Warren hated sentimental parties. On our 30th, he took me to dinner, complained about the price of salmon, and fell asleep watching the news. Now he wanted flowers, family friends, a private room, and a cake. He even wanted Pastor Robert there. "Why so much fuss this year?" I asked. He looked at me with that patient expression men use when they have already decided the truth is none of your business. Can't a husband celebrate his wife? I wanted to believe him. That is the part I'm not proud of. Even after the locked phone, the porch calls, the cologne, the coldness, and the little comments that made me feel like a burden, some part of me still hoped he had woken up and remembered me. So I smiled. "That sounds lovely," I said. Warren reached across the table and patted my hand. Not held it, patted it, like I was an old dog that had behaved. "You'll see," he said. "It'll be a night to remember." And when he said that, something in his voice made the hair rise on the back of my neck, because he wasn't promising me joy. He was promising himself a performance. That night, while he slept beside me with his back turned, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the furnace hum through the vents. I thought about our life, the church pew, the holiday photos, the neighbors waving from driveways, Laura's wedding, Michael's graduation, the home I had cleaned, decorated, protected, and loved. From the outside, it looked like a perfect American marriage. But inside that quiet bedroom, I finally admitted what I had been avoiding. My husband was preparing something, and whatever it was, he expected me not to survive it with my dignity intact. He was wrong. The first real proof came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Warren was at golf, or at least that was what he told me. I remember the sound of rain tapping against the kitchen windows, steady and dull, the kind of rain that makes a house feel larger than it is. I had been folding towels in the laundry room when I noticed his study door was half open. That door was almost never open anymore, For years, Warren's study had been just another room in our home. I dusted the shelves, watered the plant by the window, emptied the small trash can beside his desk. After he retired, it became his private territory. He did not say that directly. Men like Warren rarely say the cruel thing plainly. He simply started closing the door, then locking his laptop, then turning papers face down when I walked in. That afternoon, I stood in the hallway with a warm towel in my hands and stared at the open door. I told myself to keep walking. I told myself a good wife did not go through her husband's things. Then I remembered the locked phone, the February porch calls, the new cologne, the private laugh, the way he had said, "It'll be a night to remember." So I stepped inside. The room smelled like leather paper and the faint sharpness of Warren's aftershave. His desk was neat as always, a silver pen beside the calendar, a stack of financial magazines, his reading glasses folded beside his laptop. Nothing looked wrong. That was the thing about Warren. Even his lies had clean edges. I walked to the bookshelf first. I don't know why. Maybe because I was afraid of the desk. Maybe because part of me still hoped I would find nothing and feel ashamed. His golf notebook sat on the second shelf, the black one with the small gold initials WF on the corner. Warren tracked every game like it was a business report. Course names, scores, weather, who played well, who cheated by moving a ball when he thought no one saw. I opened it without thinking much. A folded slip of paper fell out and landed near my shoe. My first thought was that it must be a receipt. I bent down slowly. The paper had 3 lines written in Warren's sharp handwriting. Patricia Coleman, 2:30, Thursday. Anniversary party announcement. Bring agreement. I read it once, then again. The words did not enter my mind all at the same time. They arrived separately like strangers knocking at different doors. Patricia Coleman, anniversary party, announcement, agreement. I sat down in Warren's leather chair because my knees had gone weak. The rain kept tapping the window. Somewhere downstairs, the dryer buzzed. I remember those ordinary sounds because the rest of the world had tilted. Patricia Coleman was not a financial advisor. I knew that name. I had seen it once on a billboard near downtown Columbus. Coleman Family Law. I could see the billboard in my mind. A woman in a dark suit, arms folded. Calm face, strong letters, divorce, custody, asset protection. My mouth went dry. For a moment, I could not breathe properly. Not because Warren wanted a divorce. That pain came later. The first shock was colder than grief. He was going to announce it at our anniversary party, in front of our children, in front of Pastor Robert, in front of the neighbors who had eaten peach cobbler in my backyard and told me we were lucky to have each other. I placed the paper on the desk and stared at it. A good woman, I used to think, would confront her husband immediately. She would demand the truth. She would cry. She would say, "How could you?" But I had lived with Warren too long. I knew confrontation was where he was strongest. He could turn a question into an accusation. He could make concern sound like hysteria. He could stand there calmly while I shook, and by the end of it, I would look like the problem. So I did not run downstairs. I did not call him. I did not tear the note apart. I picked up my phone and took a picture. My hand trembled so badly the first photo blurred. I took another, then another. After that, I put the paper back exactly where I found it, tucked inside the golf notebook between 2 pages about a course in Dublin. Then I stood in the center of his study listening to my own heartbeat. There had to be more. I hated that thought. I hated myself for having it. But once a door opens inside your marriage, You cannot pretend you did not see the room behind it. I checked the desk drawer. The top drawer held pens, sticky notes, a small flashlight, paper clips, and a pack of breath mints. The second drawer was locked. The third opened with a soft scrape. Inside was a folder labeled Ridgeway. That was the name of the restaurant Warren had chosen for our anniversary party. Ridgeway House. Old brick building, white tablecloths, soft lighting. The kind of place where people speak quietly because the prices are too high for normal voices. I opened the folder. There was a printed reservation confirmation for the private dining room. 24 guests, fixed menu, wine package, anniversary cake. Then I saw the note typed at the bottom under event details. Celebration and transition. Not celebration. Celebration and transition. I felt something inside me go still. Transition was not a word people used for a marriage they planned to honor. It was a word people used when they wanted to make a death sound elegant. I turned the page. There was a seating chart. Warren had put himself at the center of the head table. I was beside him, of course. Laura and Mark to my left. Michael to Warren's right. Pastor Robert directly across from us. That detail made me feel sick. Warren had not invited our pastor because he wanted a blessing. He wanted a witness. He had placed the people most likely to calm me closest to me. Laura because she would grab my hand if I cried. Pastor Robert because I would not want to cause a scene in front of him. Michael because Warren knew I hated disappointing our son. It was not a dinner. It was a trap with candles. I put the folder back page by page exactly as it had been. Then I left the study, closed the door halfway, and went downstairs. The dryer had stopped. The towels were cooling in the basket. I stood in the laundry room and pressed both palms against the machine. My body wanted to collapse. My mind would not let it. Not yet, I whispered. Those 2 words became my rope. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. Warren came home just after 5. He walked in through the garage, shook rain from his jacket, and called Tess. His voice sounded normal. That almost made me hate him more. In the kitchen, I said. He came in smelling of wet wool and cologne. Not golf, no grass, no fresh air, no sweat. I noticed that now. How was golf? I asked. He removed his gloves slowly. Canceled. Too much rain. Had lunch with Bill instead. Bill had moved to Arizona 6 months earlier. I kept chopping carrots. That's nice. He paused. Maybe he heard something in my voice. Maybe guilt makes liars sensitive. You all right? I looked up and smiled. Yes, just tired. He studied me for a second, then looked away. Well, don't overdo it. You've been forgetful lately when you get tired. There it was again. Forgetful. A small word dropped like a seed. I wanted to ask him what exactly I had forgotten. I wanted to ask if Patricia Coleman had advised him to start saying that. I wanted to ask whether he had practiced his anniversary speech in front of a mirror. Instead, I said, "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. He nodded, satisfied. That evening, we ate roast chicken, carrots, and mashed potatoes while rain slid down the dark windows. Warren talked about the restaurant. I confirmed the final guest count, he said. Oh, yes. Laura said they'll be there. Michael, too. Pastor Robert was pleased to be included. I'm sure he was. Warren cut his chicken into small, exact pieces. I think it's important, he said, to honor the truth of a long marriage. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. The truth? He looked at me. Of course. His eyes held mine for 1 second too long. Then he smiled, not warmly, carefully. I forced myself to chew. The chicken tasted like paper. After dinner, he took a call. He did not take it in the study. He went out to the back porch again. The rain had slowed to a mist. The porch light painted his silver hair gold. I stood in the kitchen, rinsing plates I had already rinsed, and watched his reflection in the window. His voice was low. I could not hear every word at first. Then he turned slightly toward the door. "No," he said. "She has no idea." My fingers tightened around the plate. A pause. Then he laughed softly. "She won't fight. She never does." The plate slipped from my hand and struck the sink with a crack. Warren turned. I froze. He looked through the glass. I looked down at the broken plate. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I bent slowly and picked up the pieces. By the time Warren came inside, I had wrapped them in a paper towel. "What happened?" he asked. "Slipped," I said. He glanced at the sink, then at my face. "You need to be more careful." I almost laughed. There he stood, planning to shatter my life in public, telling me to be careful with a dinner plate. "I know," I said. He kissed the top of my head, a dry, meaningless kiss. Then he went upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower turn on. Only then did I grip the edge of the counter and let one tear fall. Just one. Not because I was strong. Because I was afraid if I started, I would make a sound, and if Warren heard me, he would know. He would know I had found the first thread. He would know I was going to pull. That night, I did not sleep. Warren snored beside me like a man with a clean conscience. I lay flat on my back and stared into the dark. She won't fight. He was right about one thing. The old Teresa would not have. The old Teresa would have begged. She would have asked what she did wrong. She would have protected the children from discomfort. She would have swallowed humiliation to keep the peace. But something had changed in Warren's study. Not loudly, not dramatically. A small door had opened inside me, and behind it was the girl from Dayton who knew how to read numbers, watch hands, and spot a man smiling too hard across a counter. By morning, I had made my first decision. I would not confront Warren. I would not warn him. I would not give him the gift of seeing my pain before I understood his plan. If he wanted a stage, he could have one. But before that night arrived, I was going to learn every line of the script he thought he had written for me, and then I was going to write my own. Once I found the note in Warren's golf notebook, I stopped being a wife waiting for an explanation. I became a woman watching a pattern. That was when I started noticing Denise Harper. At first, her name had sounded harmless. Warren mentioned her one evening over dinner while he was cutting into a pork chop. "Denise thinks the Sarasota market is going to keep climbing," he said. I looked up. "Denise?" He didn't even pause. "Denise Harper. Real estate consultant. I told you about her." He had not. But I had been married long enough to know that saying, "No, you didn't," would only open the door for him to say, "I had forgotten." So I simply said, "Right." Warren nodded, as if I had passed a small test. "She's very sharp," he said. "Understands investment properties better than most men I've worked with." That sentence stayed with me, not because he complimented another woman. I was not that petty. I had known Warren worked with women. I had hosted dinners where his female colleagues sat at my table and talked about quarterly reports while I refilled wine glasses. No, what bothered me was the tone. Admiration, warmth, interest. All the things his voice no longer carried when he spoke about me. A week later, Denise appeared again. This time, Warren was in the living room reading something on his tablet. I was watering the plant by the bay window. He smiled at the screen. Not a polite smile, not a business smile, a young smile. I almost dropped the watering can. "Good news?" I asked. His face closed so quickly, It was like watching a curtain fall. Just a message about the Florida property. What Florida property? He tapped the tablet off. Potential property. Nothing settled. You didn't mention you were looking at property in Florida. He sighed. Not loudly. Worse. Patiently. Teresa, I don't tell you every preliminary conversation. It would bore you. There it was again. The little pat on the head without the hand. I looked at the plant. Water had spilled onto the windowsill. I see, I said, but I did not see. Not yet. So I began looking, not wildly, not like a jealous woman tearing through pockets at midnight. I knew better than that. Warren wanted me emotional. He wanted me confused. He wanted me to react before I understood. I gave him none of that. I checked what was mine to check. The joint credit card, the shared checking account, the household email attached to our restaurant reservations, utilities, and travel confirmations. For 35 years, I had paid bills, filed receipts, and kept tax folders in labeled boxes. Warren used to mock me for that. You and your little systems, he would say. Now those little systems became my flashlight. The first strange charge was from a restaurant in Sarasota. $286. The name was Belle Marina. I had never been there. Warren had told me that trip was for a one-day investment seminar in Tampa. He said he ate at the hotel and went to bed early because the flight exhausted him. I stared at that charge for a long time. $286 was not a lonely man eating soup at a hotel bar. I clicked further. Hotel upgrade, car service, a boutique flower shop. The flower shop made me sit back in my chair. Warren had not bought me flowers in 4 years. The last bouquet he gave me came from the grocery store, still wrapped in plastic, because Laura reminded him it was my birthday. I kept scrolling. Another trip, then another. Sarasota in March. Sarasota in May. Sarasota in July. Always with clean explanations. Consulting lunch. Market research. Investment review. One hotel confirmation had been sent to our household email by mistake. Warren must not have noticed because he rarely checked that account. I opened it and read every line. 2 guests, King Suite, Ocean View. My hands went cold. I printed it. Then I printed the credit card charges. Then I placed them in a folder in the bottom drawer of my sewing table, underneath old patterns I knew Warren would never touch. That night, Warren came downstairs wearing one of his new shirts. Pale blue, crisp collar. He had shaved again, though he had nowhere to go. You're dressed up? I said. Dinner with a potential investor. Anyone I know? No. He sprayed cologne on his wrist and rubbed it against his neck. I watched from the bedroom doorway. For years, I had begged him to wear cologne when we went out. He said it gave him a headache. Now, apparently, his headaches had healed. Will you be late? I asked. He looked at me in the mirror. Don't wait up. A husband says that casually. A stranger says it like a door closing. After he left, I walked through our quiet house. The kitchen was clean. The porch light was on. The hydrangeas outside the window bent softly in the evening wind. Everything looked normal. That was the horror of it. Betrayal does not always kick the door in. Sometimes it uses the key you gave it and wipes its shoes on the mat. I made tea I did not drink. Then I opened the laptop and searched Denise Harper. She was easy to find. Harper Coastal Realty Group. Professional photo. Blonde hair cut to her shoulders. White blazer. Confident smile. 49, maybe 50. Not young enough to be foolish. Old enough to know exactly what she was doing. Her biography said she specialized in luxury retirement properties, second homes, and fresh starts for clients entering new chapters. fresh starts, new chapters. I closed the laptop too hard. For one wild moment, I wanted to call her. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to ask whether she knew he still slept beside me every night. Whether she knew I washed the coffee cups he left in the sink. Whether she knew I had held his mother's hand while she died. But I did not call, because Denise was not the disease. She was a symptom. Warren was the man who had made vows to me. Warren was the man moving money. Warren was the man preparing an anniversary ambush. And Warren was the man I had to understand. The money became clearer 3 days later. I was reviewing the checking account when I saw a withdrawal for $18,000. The memo line said, "Home repair." I stared at it so long the numbers blurred. Home repair. I stood up and walked through the house. The roof had not been replaced. The furnace had not been serviced. The plumbing had not been touched. The deck still had the same loose board I had asked Warren to fix twice. The kitchen sink still dripped if you did not turn the handle just right. The garage door still groaned like an old man every time it opened. No contractor had been in our house. No invoice had come in the mail. No estimate sat on Warren's desk. No repairman had called my number, and everyone called my number because Warren never wanted to deal with household details. $18,000 had left our shared account for a repair that did not exist. That was when the betrayal changed shape. Until then, I had been hurt. Now, I was afraid. Not afraid of being alone. I had been lonely beside Warren for years. I was afraid because I finally understood what kind of man I was dealing with. A man having an affair might lie. A man planning a divorce might hide. But a man moving shared money under false labels was doing something else. He was preparing to leave me weak. I printed the withdrawal record. My printer made a soft grinding sound in the guest room. Each page that came out felt like a heartbeat. I added it to the folder. That folder was getting thicker. So was the silence between Warren and me. He must have sensed something because he became strangely pleasant. Not loving. Pleasant. There is a difference. He brought home coffee cake from the bakery I liked. He asked if Laura had called. He complimented the green sweater I wore to church. "You look nice today," he said. I almost asked, "Do I look like a woman who won't fight?" Instead, I smiled. "Thank you." At church, he placed his hand on my back again. Pastor Robert asked about the anniversary party, and Warren beamed. "We're looking forward to it," he said. "A marriage like ours deserves to be honored properly." I felt his palm against my spine. Warm, heavy, false. Across the fellowship hall, Michael was talking to someone from the finance committee. Laura was helping her daughters choose cookies from a tray. Everyone looked safe. I realized Warren was counting on that. He knew I would not want to disturb the children. He knew I would not want to embarrass the church. He knew I had spent my whole adult life smoothing wrinkles out of rooms so other people could feel comfortable. That had been my mistake. I had mistaken peacekeeping for love. A few nights later, Warren's phone buzzed while he was in the shower. It sat on his nightstand screen up. I did not touch it. I did not need to. The message preview lit up by itself. Denise Harper. Can't wait until this is finally behind us. My chest tightened. This? Not the Florida deal. Not the property. This. I stood there in the dim bedroom water running behind the bathroom door and understood something that made me feel almost calm. Denise knew. She knew there was a this to get behind them. She knew I existed. She knew I was still in the house. She knew there was a marriage Warren had not yet ended, and from the sound of that message, she was waiting for him to finish the job. The shower turned off. I walked away before Warren came out. Downstairs, I opened my sewing drawer and took out the folder. I placed Denise's message in my notebook from memory, word for word, with the date and time. Then I wrote 3 names at the top of a blank page. Warren Fuller, Denise Harper, Patricia Coleman. I circled Warren's name, not Denise's, not the lawyer's. Warren's, because I needed to remember where the center of the storm was. It is easy when another woman enters your marriage to pour all your rage into her. It gives the pain a face you never loved, but the person who owes you loyalty is the one who stood at the altar, the one who built a life with you, the one who knows exactly where your soft places are. Denise may have opened a door. Warren handed her the key. That night, when he came downstairs in his robe, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea. He looked at me. "You're up late." "So are you." He smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep?" "No," I said, just thinking. His eyes sharpened. "About what?" I held the warm mug between both hands. "The anniversary party." His expression relaxed. "Oh, don't worry about that. I have everything handled." I looked at the man I had loved for more than half my life. For the first time, I saw him clearly. Not as the young husband who danced with me in our first apartment. Not as the father holding Laura in the hospital. Not as the grieving son at his mother's funeral. But as the man sitting across from me now, calm and clean, and certain that I would walk blindfolded into my own humiliation. "I'm sure you do," I said. He nodded, pleased. Then he went to bed. I stayed in the kitchen until the tea went cold. The house was silent around me, but inside my mind, every piece was moving. Denise, Florida, the fake home repair, the private room, the note in the golf book, the agreement, the announcement. Warren thought he was preparing a new life. What he did not understand was that he had finally given me something I had not felt in years. Focus. By morning, I knew I needed help. Not from Laura. Not yet. Not from Michael. Warren had already started shaping him. Not from friends who would gasp, "Pity me," and accidentally warn the whole town. I needed someone who understood divorce money and men who smiled while sharpening knives. I needed a lawyer of my own, and I needed one before Warren realized I was no longer standing where he had left me. The next morning, I did something I had not done in years. I lied to Warren. Not a dramatic lie. Not the kind that makes a person sweat. Just a small, ordinary sentence spoken over coffee. "I'm going to the library today," I said. Warren sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his tablet. He barely looked up. "The library?" "Yes, they're having a used book sale." He made a soft sound through his nose. "You don't need more books, Teresa." I poured cream into my coffee and watched it bloom white in the dark liquid. "No," I said. "I suppose I don't." He went back to his tablet. That was the beauty of being underestimated. Warren did not ask what time I was leaving. He did not ask which branch. He did not ask why I was wearing my better coat, or why my purse looked heavier than usual. In his mind, I was still the same woman. Predictable. Soft. Manageable. I had spent the night searching quietly on my phone after Warren fell asleep. Divorce lawyers in Columbus. Family law. Hidden assets. Long-term marriage. Spousal support. Financial misconduct. Most names looked polished and cold. But one stood out. Evelyn Marks. Her photo showed a woman in her mid-60s with silver brown hair, clear eyes, and a face that did not beg to be liked. Her website did not use words like fresh start or new chapter. It said family law, asset division, high conflict divorce, Financial protection. Then near the bottom, one sentence caught me. You do not have to be loud to protect yourself. I called at 8:05 that morning from the grocery store parking lot. A receptionist answered. Mark's Family Law. My voice almost failed me. My name is Teresa Fuller, I said. I need to speak to someone about a divorce. There was a pause. Are you safe, Mrs. Fuller? That question nearly broke me. No one had asked me that. Not really. I looked through the windshield at a woman pushing a cart full of groceries, a toddler kicking his feet in the seat. The world was still moving as if mine had not cracked open. Yes, I said. Physically, yes. The receptionist understood the difference. We had a cancellation at 11:30. I'll be there. Evelyn's office was in an old brick building near downtown Columbus. Not flashy. Not cold. The waiting room had navy chairs framed black and white photographs and a box of tissues on every side table. That should have warned me. Places that understand pain always keep tissues within reach. I sat with my folder on my lap and pressed my palms flat against it. Inside were the printed hotel confirmation, the Sarasota charges, the fake home repair withdrawal, the Ridgeway house reservation, the seating chart, and the photo of Warren's note. My whole marriage had been reduced to paper. A door opened. Mrs. Fuller. Evelyn Marks stood there in a charcoal suit holding a yellow legal pad. She was not tall, but she had a stillness about her that made the room settle. I stood too quickly. Teresa, I said. Please call me Teresa. Something in her face softened. Then call me Evelyn. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. No family photos on the desk. No inspirational quotes on the wall. Just shelves of law books, a locked file cabinet, and one small plant by the window, green and stubborn. She waited until I sat. Then she said, Start wherever you can. That was when I realized how long it had been since someone let me speak without interrupting. I told her about Warren, 35 years, 2 grown children, his retirement, the locked phone, the porch calls, the anniversary party, Patricia Coleman, Denise Harper, Sarasota, the fake home repair. At first, I tried to sound calm, reasonable, organized. Then my voice cracked on the word announcement. Evelyn slid the tissue box toward me without making a fuss. I hated needing it, but I took one. He was going to do it in front of everyone, I said. Our children, our pastor, our friends. I think he wanted me shocked. I think he wanted me embarrassed. Evelyn leaned back slightly. That is possible. The way she said it made me cold. Possible. I have seen it before, she said. A spouse creates a public emotional event, then uses the other spouse's reaction as leverage. If you cry, you're unstable. If you get angry, you're irrational. If you refuse to sign anything, you're difficult. Public pressure can make people agree to terrible terms. I stared at her. So you think he might try to make me sign something? I think you found the word spring agreement in his notes. So, yes, Teresa. I think he may intend to present you with paperwork when you are emotionally overwhelmed. My stomach turned. He knows I hate scenes. Then he chose the scene carefully. I looked down at my hands. My wedding ring sat there, plain gold, worn thin at the edges. I had never taken it off, except for surgery. What do I do? First, Evelyn said, you do not sign anything. Not at the party, not at home, not if he cries, not if he apologizes, not if he says it is only a formality. Nothing. I nodded. Second, you do not confront him yet. I looked up. I thought you might tell me to. No, not until we understand what he has done financially. If he is moving money warning him may make assets disappear faster. The word assets sounded ugly in a conversation about my life. But it was the correct word. Warren had turned our marriage into a financial strategy. I had to stop pretending this was only heartbreak. Evelyn opened my folder. She reviewed each document slowly. She asked clear questions. Was the checking account joint? Yes. Did I have access to tax returns? Yes, in boxes at home. Did Warren manage investments? Mostly. Had I signed any recent agreements? Not that I knew of. Did he ever pressure me to sign forms without reading them? I almost said no. Then I remembered the kitchen island. Warren sliding papers toward me while I stirred soup. Just retirement account updates, he would say. Sign here. Or insurance beneficiary language. Nothing important. Or estate planning housekeeping. I felt heat rise in my face. I may have, I whispered. Over the years, I trusted him. Evelyn did not shame me. Most spouses do. That helped and hurt at the same time. She made notes. Then she looked at me in a way that made my chest tighten before she spoke. Has Warren tried to make you look unstable lately? The room went very quiet. What? Forgetful. Emotional. Confused. Too tired to understand things. Has he said anything like that to other people? My first instinct was to defend him. That instinct had lived in me so long it rose automatically like a hand covering a bruise. Then the memories came. Warren in the kitchen saying, "You've been forgetful lately when you get tired." Warren at church telling a woman from the prayer group, "Teresa gets overwhelmed more easily these days." Warren laughing with Michael on the phone saying, "Your mother worries about every little thing." Warren moving my car keys from the bowl by the door to the laundry shelf, then asking, "Are you sure you didn't put them there?" Warren telling Laura, "Your mom has been a bit sensitive lately. Don't upset her with too much." At the time, each comment had seemed small. A husband's irritation, a careless joke, a normal aging marriage. Now they lined up like matches. "Yes," I said slowly. "He has." Evelyn's pen stopped. "Tell me." So I did. The more I talked, the more foolish I felt. Not because the things were imaginary. Because they were real, and I had explained them away. He told Michael I was spending too much, I said. But I barely buy anything for myself. He told Laura I was overwhelmed. He said I forget things. He says it in front of people, softly, like he's worried about me. He told Michael I was spending too much. I said, but I barely buy anything for myself. He told Laura I was overwhelmed. He said I forget things. He says it in front of people, softly, like he's worried about me. Evelyn's face did not change, but her eyes sharpened. That is important. Why? Because if he is planning to surprise you publicly, he may already be preparing witnesses to interpret your reaction through that lens. I felt the blood drain from my face. So, if I cry, they may think he was right to be concerned. And if I get angry, he may say, "This is what I've been dealing with." I pressed my fingers to my lips. It was so cruel, so planned, so Warren. He's making a story before I even know I'm in it, I said. Evelyn nodded once. Yes. That sentence entered me like ice water. For 35 years, I had told myself Warren was proud, distant, controlling, hard to please. But this was different. This was not neglect. This was construction. He was building a version of me that could be dismissed. A woman who forgot. A woman who cried. A woman who could not handle truth. A woman whose husband had nobly endured her decline until he had no choice but to seek peace elsewhere. I stood up suddenly because sitting still became impossible. Evelyn did not tell me to calm down. That may be why I did. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Cars moved through downtown traffic. People crossed at the light. A delivery man carried flowers into the building across the way. Somebody was getting flowers. Somebody else was getting divorced. Life was unfairly ordinary that morning. "I don't want my children to think I'm crazy," I said. My voice was small. Evelyn's answer was not. "Then we make sure they see facts." I turned back. "How?" "We gather everything. Bank records, credit card statements, tax returns, investment summaries, emails, texts if you have access to your own devices, dates, times, screenshots, copies. I don't know where everything is. You know more than you think." That almost made me cry again. Not because it was kind, because it was true. Warren had spent years making me feel like I did not understand our money, but I had filed every tax folder. I knew which cabinet held insurance papers. I knew where old closing documents were stored. I knew the password to the household email. I knew what bills came every month and what charges did not belong. I was not helpless. I had just been treated that way for so long that I had begun moving carefully around my own intelligence. Evelyn closed the folder. "Teresa, I need you to listen carefully. Do not let him know you came here. Do not threaten him. Do not tell Denise you know. Do not tell mutual friends. And do not tell your children everything yet unless there is an immediate need." That hurt. Laura would believe me. Maybe Evelyn said, "But if she reacts, Warren may realize you know. And if Michael has already been influenced, he may warn his father without understanding the harm." I hated that she was right, so I just go home. "You go home," she said. "You observe, you document, you protect yourself." "And the party." "For now," Evelyn said, "let Warren believe his plan is intact." I swallowed hard. "That feels like lying." Evelyn looked at me for a long moment. "No, Teresa, that is strategy." I left her office with a checklist, a second folder, and a business card tucked deep in my purse. Before I opened my car door, I stood on the sidewalk and breathed in the cold Ohio air. For the first time since I found Warren's note, I did not feel alone. I felt terrified, but no longer alone. When I got home, Warren was in the living room watching financial news. He glanced up. "Find anything good at the book sale? I hung my coat in the closet." "One or two things." He nodded, uninterested. Then he looked back at the television. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cabinet, and reached for a mug with steady hands. One or two things. A lawyer, a plan, and the first clear understanding that my husband was not simply leaving me. He was trying to erase me before he walked out. But now, someone else knew I existed. And that changed everything. After I met Evelyn Marks, I began living two lives inside the same house. In one life, I was still Teresa Fuller Warren's wife. I made coffee in the morning. I folded towels. I asked whether he wanted salmon or chicken for dinner. I reminded him about his dentist appointment because even with everything happening, a 35-year habit does not vanish overnight. In the other life, I became my own witness. Every morning, after Warren left the kitchen, I wrote things down. Not in the pretty journal Laura had given me for Christmas. Warren might recognize that. I used an old spiral notebook I found in the drawer beside the phone books we never used anymore. The cover was bent. The pages were cheap. It looked like something a woman might use for grocery lists. That was why it was perfect. On the first page, I wrote the date. Then I wrote, "Warren said I was forgetful in front of Michael." Warren took call outside at 8:42 p.m. Warren claimed lunch with Bill, who lives in Arizona. $18,000 withdrawal marked home repair. Denise Harper message preview. Can't wait until this is finally behind us. I stared at those lines when I finished. They looked so plain, so bloodless. but each sentence held a wound. Evelyn had told me, "Write facts, not feelings." Feelings matter, Teresa, but facts can stand in a room when people try to argue with you. So I learned to make my pain useful. That was harder than crying. Crying would have been easy. Crying would have emptied me for a little while. Instead, I documented. I dated. I copied. I stored. I became careful in a way Warren had never believed I could be. I bought a small flash drive at an office supply store and paid cash. I scanned documents at the library, not at home. I created a new email account with a password Warren would never guess, because it was not connected to birthdays, anniversaries, children, or anything from the life he thought he owned. Evelyn's assistant helped me set up secure uploads. "Only send from your own device," she said, "and log out every time." I did, every time. I felt ridiculous at first, like an old woman pretending to be in a spy movie. But then I would remember the private room, the seating chart, the words bring agreement, and I would stop feeling ridiculous. I would feel awake. At home, Warren grew more confident by the day. He talked about the anniversary party constantly, which was strange because for most of our marriage, he treated celebrations like chores. Ridgway confirmed the menu, he said one evening. I was peeling potatoes at the sink. "That's nice. They'll start with a salad, then guests can choose beef tenderloin or chicken piccata." "Sounds elegant." He leaned against the counter, pleased with himself. "I thought it should be elegant. 35 years is rare." I turned on the faucet so he would not see my face. "Yes," I said, "rare." He came closer and touched my shoulder. I stiffened before I could stop myself. His fingers paused. "You're tense. Just tired." He gave a small sigh. "You've been tired a lot lately." I dried my hands slowly. "I'm 62, Warren. People get tired." He smiled, but his eyes stayed watchful. "Of course, I only worry about you." That was the worst part. His cruelty had learned to dress itself as concern. 2 days later, I found the guest list. It was not hidden well. Warren had left it in a folder on the dining room table while he went upstairs to take a call. Maybe he thought I would not look. Maybe he wanted me to see just enough to feel honored. I looked. 24 names. Laura Fuller Bennett and Mark Bennett, Michael Fuller, Pastor Robert Jenkins, Tom and Elaine Wilkes from next door, Marjorie Collins from church, a few cousins from Warren's side, 3 old business associates, and 2 couples from the golf club. I read the names twice. My stomach tightened. Warren had not invited people close to me. He had invited people useful to him, people who respected him, people who would believe his voice before mine, people who would say later, "He seemed so calm. She seemed so upset." My eyes stopped on Pastor Robert's name. I imagined Warren standing in that private room, one hand in his jacket, voice soft and sorrowful. Teresa and I have reached a difficult place. I imagined myself hearing it with no warning. Laura gasping, Michael staring, Pastor Robert lowering his eyes. The neighbors pretending not to watch while watching every breath I took. I imagined the envelope, the agreement, the humiliation wrapped in white linen and candlelight. My hand tightened around the guest list until the paper bent. Then Warren's footsteps sounded upstairs. I smoothed the page and put it back exactly where I found it. By the time he returned, I was arranging napkins in the sideboard drawer. He glanced at the table, then at me. "What are you doing?" "Looking for the silver napkin rings." "For what?" "The party," I said. "I thought maybe we should bring them if the restaurant allows it." His face relaxed. "No need. Ridgway has everything handled." Of course it did. So did he. That night, I called Evelyn from my car in the grocery store parking lot. I had started going there often, because it was the one place Warren did not question. Women my age could spend 40 minutes in a grocery store, and no one thought anything of it. He's invited everyone who would make me afraid to react, I said. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Do you want us to stop the party? The question surprised me. Can we? There are legal steps we can take before then. We can also serve him privately before the event, depending on timing. You are not required to walk into a public ambush. I looked through the windshield at the glowing grocery sign. For 1 second, I wanted to say yes. Stop it. End it. Let me stay home. Let me not sit beside a man who has rehearsed my destruction. But then I thought of Warren's face when he said, she won't fight. She never does. I thought of every time he had lowered his voice and made me smaller. I thought of Michael being taught to doubt me. I thought of Laura being prepared to comfort me instead of believe me. And something in me hardened. No, I said. Evelyn did not answer immediately. No, she repeated. He chose the room, I said. He chose the guests. He chose the night. If we stop it early, he'll tell everyone I fell apart. He'll say I forced his hand. He'll become the calm one again. That may be true. I don't want to give him that. What do you want? I looked at my own reflection in the windshield. Gray at my temples. Tired eyes. Mouth set in a line I barely recognized. I want him to walk onto the stage he built, I said, and I want the truth waiting there before he can hand me that envelope. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Then we prepare very carefully. That became the rule of my life. Carefully, I did not rush. I did not accuse. I smiled when Warren discussed flowers. White roses, he decided. Classic, he said. Funeral flowers, I thought. But I nodded. I helped him choose a cake flavor. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Your favorite, he said. It was not. It was Denise Harper's, apparently. I discovered that from a comment on her real estate company's social media page where she had once written, "Vanilla raspberry cake is my weakness." I did not know whether to laugh or scream, so I wrote it down. Warren even asked me what song should play during dinner. Something meaningful, he said. What do you suggest? He leaned back in his chair. Maybe The Way You Look Tonight. That almost broke me. That had been our wedding song. For a second I saw the young Warren again. 28, nervous, handsome, whispering the words wrong while we danced in a rented hall with paper flowers and a cake. My mother said leaned to the left. Then I saw the man in front of me now, using that memory like decoration. I smiled anyway. That would be lovely. He looked satisfied. He did not see that my hands were clenched under the table. Over the next week, I gathered everything Evelyn asked for. Tax returns from the file cabinet, investment summaries from the basement boxes, old bank statements, insurance papers, retirement account notices, property records. I learned Warren's patterns. He left his study unlocked when he took long showers. He checked his phone before bed, then put it face down. He took calls from Denise on Wednesdays and Fridays, usually after dinner. He spoke with Patricia Coleman twice that I could confirm. Each time I wrote the date. Each time I felt less like a victim and more like a woman building a wall stone by stone. But living beside him was its own punishment. At breakfast, he would ask, "Did you sleep well?" And I would think, do men sleep better when they believe their wives are fools? At dinner, he would say, "You're quiet." And I would think, silence is the only thing protecting me from you. At church, he would hold my hand during prayer. And I would think, God heard what you said on the porch. The hardest moment came when he stood behind me one afternoon while I was arranging flowers in a vase. You know, he said softly, I hope the party helps you see how much people care about you. I looked at the flowers. White lilies. Their scent was too sweet. That's kind of you. I said. He touched my hair. If anything emotional happens that night, just trust me. I'll handle it. There it was, the warning disguised as comfort. I turned to him. For one dangerous second, I almost said, I know everything. Instead, I reached up and adjusted one lily stem. I'm sure you will. His hand dropped from my hair. He smiled. Then he left the room. I waited until I heard his study door close. Then I pulled the white lilies from the vase and threw them in the trash. Not because I was hysterical, because I finally understood something. Warren had mistaken my restraint for surrender. He had mistaken my manners for weakness. He had mistaken my love for blindness. And now, he was about to mistake my silence for ignorance. That was his final mistake. By the end of that week, my folder had become 3 folders. One for money, one for lies, one for the party. I labeled none of them. I wrapped them in an old quilt and stored them in a plastic Christmas bin marked Garland's Broken Lights. Warren had never opened a holiday bin in his life. On Sunday evening, he stood in the kitchen and said, "Only 2 weeks until our big night." Our big night. I looked at him across the island. For the first time, I did not feel like crying. I felt almost calm. "Yes," I said, "only 2 weeks." He smiled. I smiled back. And in that quiet kitchen, between a man rehearsing betrayal and a woman rehearsing survival, the real countdown began. There is a special kind of pain that comes when your children begin looking at you through someone else's story. Not strangers, not neighbors. Your own children. The 2 people whose fevers you measured with the back of your hand. The 2 people whose school projects you finished at midnight with glue stuck to your fingers. The 2 people you loved so fiercely that you sometimes forgot you had a body of your own. Laura and Michael were not children anymore. But to me, a mother's heart does not fully understand age. Laura was 41, married to Mark, with 2 teenage daughters, who had her same soft eyes. She lived 40 minutes away, close enough to visit, far enough that daily life swallowed her whole. She worked part-time at a dental office, volunteered at the school, ran her girls to volleyball and choir, and still called me whenever she felt something was wrong. Michael was 38, unmarried, neat, ambitious, and practical. He worked in insurance downtown and wore pressed shirts even on casual Fridays. He had Warren's discipline, Warren's posture, Warren's talent for sounding sure even when he had not listened long enough. I loved them both, but I did not trust both of them with the truth yet. That was one of the hardest instructions Evelyn gave me. "Wait," she said. "How can I wait?" I asked. "They're my children. They are also his children," she said. "And right now, you do not know what he has told them." I hated that, mostly because I already knew enough to be afraid. Warren started with Michael. He did it slowly, casually, like a man dropping crumbs for a bird. One Sunday after church, Michael came over for lunch. I made pot roast because that had always been his favorite. He kissed my cheek when he arrived, but his eyes moved over my face in a way that made me uncomfortable, like he was checking for cracks. "You feeling okay, Mom?" he asked. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Dad said you've been tired." I glanced at Warren. He was hanging his coat in the hall closet, his back turned, but I knew he was listening. "I sleep less than I used to," I said. "That happens." Michael nodded, but not like a son accepting an answer. Like an insurance man noting a detail. At lunch, Warren performed concern beautifully. "Your mother has been doing too much," he said, spooning gravy over his potatoes. "I keep telling her to slow down." I set the serving bowl down. "I haven't been doing more than usual." Warren smiled at Michael. "You see, she doesn't notice." Michael gave a small, uneasy laugh. "Mom let Dad help once in a while." It was such a simple sentence. That was why it hurt. because Michael thought he was being kind. He did not know he was repeating a line Warren had handed him. "I'll try," I said. Then I reached for my water glass and held it carefully so neither of them would see my hand shake. After lunch, Michael helped Warren carry boxes from the garage. I stood by the kitchen window and watched them. Warren spoke with one hand on the box and the other on Michael's shoulder. Michael listened with his head slightly lowered. That used to be a sweet sight to me, father and son. Now it looked like recruitment. When Michael left, he hugged me longer than usual. "Call me if you need anything, okay?" "I will." He pulled back. "I mean it, Mom. Anything feels confusing or overwhelming, call me." There it was. Confusing. Overwhelming. Words Warren liked. I touched my son's face. "I'm not confused, Michael." His expression flickered. "I didn't say you were." "No, but someone had. Laura was different." Laura felt storms before clouds appeared. Even as a girl, she could walk into a room and know who had cried, who was angry, and who had cried, who was angry, and who was pretending not to be. That gift made her gentle. It also made her exhausted. She called me the next afternoon while I was sorting old tax folders in the basement. Mom was pretending not to be. That gift made her gentle. It also made her exhausted. She called me the next afternoon while I was sorting old tax folders in the basement. "Mom." "Hi, honey. You sound out of breath. I'm just moving boxes." Why I looked at the cardboard box labeled 2014 taxes. "Cleaning. You hate cleaning the basement?" I had a burst of ambition. She was quiet. Laura's silence was never empty. It was full of listening. "Is everything okay with you and Dad?" My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to sit on this basement stairs with dust on my hands and say, "No, sweetheart. Your father is planning to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. He has another woman. He is moving money. He is making people think I am unstable. Please come over. Please believe me. Please be my daughter before you are his." Instead, I heard Evelyn's voice. "Wait," so I said, "Your father is your father?" Laura exhaled. "That is not an answer." "No," I said, "it isn't." "Mom." I closed my eyes. "I'm handling something. That's all I can say right now." Her voice changed. "Are you safe?" There it was again. The question that people ask when they sense the ground has opened. Yes, I'm safe. Does this have to do with the anniversary party? I opened my eyes. "Why do you ask?" "Because Dad is acting strange about it." My fingers tightened around the phone. Strange how he keeps talking like it's more than a party. He asked me to make sure Mark and I come no matter what. He said it was important for the family. I sat down on a box. "What else did he say?" Laura hesitated. "He said you've been emotional lately." The basement seemed to shrink. I looked at the row of boxes Warren had never touched. Taxes, insurance, mortgage, school memories, Christmas ornaments, a whole life stacked in brown cardboard while my husband rearranged my reputation upstairs. "What did you say?" I asked. "I told him you're allowed to have feelings." I nearly cried. Laura continued. Then he said, "Sometimes feelings cloud judgment." I pressed my hand over my mouth. And I told him he sounded like a man preparing an argument. That was my daughter, gentle but not foolish. For the first time that day, I smiled. "What did he say?" He changed the subject. I let out a breath. "Good. Mom, tell me what's going on." "I can't. Not yet." "Is Dad hurting you?" "Not with his hands," I thought. "But there are so many ways to hurt a woman." He is not physically hurting me, I said carefully. Laura heard the carefulness. I don't like that answer. I know, is Dad hurting you? Not with his hands, I thought, but there are so many ways to hurt a woman. He is not physically hurting me, I said carefully. Laura heard the carefulness. I don't like that answer. I know. Should I come over? No. Not yet. I hate this. So do I. There was a long silence. Then Laura said softly, I believe you, even if I don't know what I'm believing yet. That sentence held me together for the rest of the day. But Warren was not finished. 3 nights later, Michael called the house phone. Warren answered in the living room. I was in the hallway with a basket of laundry when I heard my name. Your mother worries, Warren said. That's all. She always has. I stopped walking. A pause. Then Warren gave a quiet laugh. No, nothing serious. But if things feel tense at the party, I need you to stay calm. She may react emotionally. My chest went cold. Another pause. I'm not asking you to take sides, son. I'm asking you to support the reasonable path. The reasonable path. I stood there with warm laundry against my hip, listening to my husband prepare my son to doubt me. When Warren hung up, I walked into the living room. He looked up. Everything all right? I asked. Fine. Michael? Yes. He's busy with work. I nodded. Warren watched me too closely. You look pale. Do I? You should sit down. I smiled. I've been standing for 62 years. I think I can manage a basket of laundry. His face tightened. Only for a second. Then he smiled back. No need to get sharp. Sharp. There was the old word. Once he had admired it. Now he used it as a warning. That night I wrote everything in the spiral notebook. Warren told Michael I may react emotionally. Warren asked Michael to support the reasonable path. Warren said he was not asking him to take sides while clearly asking him to take one. I stared at the last line. Then I added another. He is using the children. That line broke something in me. Affairs are ugly. Money lies are ugly. But using your children as props in the destruction of their mother is a different level of cruelty. The next day, Laura called again. Her voice was tight. Mom, I had lunch with Dad. I sat down immediately. What happened? He asked me something weird. My whole body went still. What? She swallowed. I could hear it. He asked if I would support him if he made a hard decision at the anniversary party. The room tilted. There it was. No more guessing. No more pattern. Warren had begun rehearsing the audience. What did you say? I asked. I said, hard decisions usually shouldn't be announced at parties. I closed my eyes. Oh, Laura. Mom, is he leaving you? For a moment, I could not speak. Not because I did not know the answer, because hearing my daughter say it made it real in a new way. I think he plans to, I said. Laura made a sound, small L, and wounded. That's what the party is? Not because I did not know the answer, because hearing my daughter say it made it real in a new way. I think he plans to, I said. Laura made a sound, small and wounded. That's what the party is. I believe so. Why would he do that? I looked toward the hallway where our wedding photo still hung in a gold frame. In it, Warren was smiling like a man who had not yet become himself. Because he thinks shame will make me quiet, I said. Laura began to cry. I did not. That surprised me. Maybe a mother can only collapse when her children are safe. And mine were not safe yet. Not from confusion, not from Warren's version of events, not from the pain waiting in that private room. Listen to me, I said. My voice sounded stronger than I felt. I need you to come to the party. I need you to say nothing to your father. I need you not to warn Michael. And I need you to trust that I am not walking in unprepared. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked at the notebook on the table, the folders hidden in the Christmas bin, Evelyn's card tucked in my wallet. I'm going to let your father finish setting the table, I said. Then I'm going to decide what gets served. Laura was quiet. Then she whispered, I'm scared. So am I. But I believe you. Those 4 words were not enough to save me, but they were enough to steady me. After we hung up, I sat alone in the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The afternoon sun moved across the floor. Upstairs, Warren's study door clicked closed. I thought about Michael still half inside his father's shadow. I thought about Laura frightened but awake. I thought about the anniversary party growing closer one day at a time, like a storm on the horizon. Warren thought he had placed our children carefully. Laura as comfort, Michael as control. But he had forgotten something. Children grow up inside a marriage too. They hear things. They remember tones. They know when the air changes, even if they cannot name the weather. And sooner or later, every performance has a moment when the lights expose the wrong actor. Warren wanted our children to witness my humiliation. He did not understand that they might become witnesses to something else. The truth. The more Warren tried to make me look small, the more I began remembering who I was before him. That may sound strange. For years, I thought my life began when I became Mrs. Warren Fuller. That was how marriage worked for women of my generation. You took his name. You moved into his plans. You learned his moods. You built your days around the shape of his ambition. But before I was Teresa Fuller, I was Teresa Caldwell. And Teresa Caldwell had not been fragile. I was born in Dayton, Ohio, the only daughter of Frank and Louise Caldwell. My father owned a small hardware store on a corner lot between a barbershop and a pharmacy. Caldwell Hardware had old wooden floors, a bell over the door, and the smell of metal dust paint and pipe fittings. I grew up behind the counter. Other girls learned piano. I learned inventory. Other girls spent Saturday mornings watching cartoons. I spent mine helping my father count screws, label paint cans, and match customers with the right wrench. By 16, I could run the register, balance the cash drawer, read vendor invoices, and spot a man who was trying to talk down to me before he finished his first sentence. My father had a simple rule. Numbers don't care who smiles at them, he used to say. So, learn the numbers. He taught me how to read contracts. Not every word at first. I was too young. But he showed me where people hid things. In small print. In extra fees. In vague phrases, in words like adjustment, service charge, estimated, and discretionary. Dishonest people love soft language, Daddy said. Makes hard things easier to steal. I had not thought about that in years. Then Warren started using words like transition and reasonable path, and my father's voice came back to me. Soft language. Hard things? That was Warren now. He was not abandoning me. He was seeking peace. He was not humiliating me. He was honoring truth. He was not hiding money. He was managing investments. He was not turning our children against me. He was preparing them for a difficult season. My father would have seen through him in 5 minutes. I wondered why it had taken me 35 years. The answer came quickly. Because I had loved him. Love can make intelligent women doubt what they know. When Warren and I first met, he was not rich. He was not powerful. He was a junior accountant with 2 suits, a used Chevy, and more ambition than money. I was teaching 2nd grade, then living in a small apartment with thrift store curtains and a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and boards. He used to come to my classroom after work with takeout coffee and ask about my students. I thought that meant he respected my world. Maybe he did then. Maybe he only knew how to admire a woman before she belonged to him. The first time Warren got into financial trouble, we had been married just under 3 years. He had made what he called a temporary miscalculation. He invested money he did not really have into a private opportunity one of his co-workers promised was safe. It was not safe. He lost nearly all of it. I found him sitting at our kitchen table late one night, papers spread everywhere, his face gray. "What happened?" I asked. He did not answer at first. Then he said, "I made a mistake." That was rare for Warren. Back then, it moved me. I sat beside him. I read every page. I did not yell. I did not shame him. I took out my small savings account, the money I had built from teaching, tutoring, and summer school work, and I helped him cover what needed to be covered. "Just until you get steady again," I said. He cried that night, not loudly. Warren never cried loudly, but his eyes filled, and he held my hands. "I'll never forget this," he said. But he did. Or worse, he remembered and hated me for it. There are some men who cannot bear the memory of being helped by a woman. They turn gratitude into resentment because gratitude makes them feel indebted. And men like Warren do not like owing anyone, especially a wife. Years passed. He climbed. I supported. When Laura was born, I took unpaid leave, then part-time work, then substitute teaching. When Michael came, Warren's travel increased. Someone had to be home. Someone had to be steady. Someone had to make sure the children had clean socks, doctor appointments, birthday cakes, and a mother at every school play. That someone was me. Warren called it our decision when other people asked. At home, he called it what made sense. Later he called it the life I provided. That last version became the official one. I did not notice when my contributions disappeared from the story. Not right away. It happened slowly. At first he said, "We were careful with money." Then it became, "I was careful with money." At first he said, "Teresa helped me early on." Then it became, "Teresa has never been interested in finances." At first he thanked me for handling the house. Then he joked that I was CEO of coupons and casserole dishes. People laughed. I laughed too. That is how erasure starts. Everyone thinks it is a joke, including the woman being erased. After my meeting with Evelyn, I went down to the basement to find old tax records. The basement smelled like cardboard laundry soap and the faint dampness every Ohio basement seems to have, no matter how much you run the dehumidifier. I pulled one box after another from the shelves. 2015 taxes, 2012 medical, insurance, mortgage, Christmas. Then I saw a box in the corner with my maiden name written on it in black marker. Caldwell Papers. I had forgotten about it, or maybe I had not forgotten. Maybe I had simply stopped believing anything from that part of my life mattered. I dragged the box to the old work table and opened it. On top were photographs. My mother in a yellow dress. My father standing outside Caldwell Hardware, one hand on the doorframe. Me at 23, wearing a blue skirt, holding a stack of student papers, smiling like I knew exactly where life was taking me. I touched that photograph with 2 fingers. "I'm sorry," I whispered. I do not know who I was apologizing to. Maybe her, maybe myself. Beneath the photographs were envelopes, bank papers, old letters, and a folder from the year my mother died. She left me a modest inheritance, not a fortune, but to me at that age, it felt enormous. It was money from years of my parents, Beneath the photographs were envelopes, bank papers, old letters, and a folder from the year my mother died. She left me a modest inheritance, not a fortune, but to me at that age it felt enormous. It was money from years of my parents' work, money saved in small pieces, money my mother wanted me to have. I remembered using part of it for the down payment on our first real house. Not the rental, not the starter condo, the brick house on Maple Ridge Lane. Our house. The house Warren now seemed to believe existed because he had willed it into being. I opened the folder carefully. There it was, the cashier's check, the bank letter, a note from my father in his blocky handwriting. Louise wanted this protected for you. Make sure Warren understands where it came from. My throat tightened. Daddy had known. Maybe not about Warren specifically, but he knew enough about life to put a warning inside a blessing. There was more. A letter from the closing attorney confirming that a portion of the down payment came from funds inherited by Teresa Fuller from the estate of Louise Caldwell. There were copies of bank transfers. There was even an old note Warren had written on yellow legal paper. Tess, I know this money was your mother's. We'll always treat it as part of what you brought into our home, I promise. I sat down hard on a folding chair. The paper shook in my hand. He had known. He had written it himself. He had promised. Then spent decades telling the world he had built everything alone. I do not know how long I sat there. The basement light hummed above me. The house was quiet. Somewhere upstairs, Warren moved around like a man with no idea that the past had just opened its eyes. I gathered every paper and placed them in a fresh folder. Not the original folder. That was too fragile. I copied each document at the library the next day and uploaded them to Evelyn's secure portal. She called me within an hour. Teresa, she said, and I could hear the change in her voice. These papers matter. How much? Potentially a great deal. I cannot promise outcomes yet, but this helps establish that part of the home's financial foundation came from your separate inheritance, and Warren acknowledged it. I closed my eyes. For the first time, the house did not feel like a cage. It felt like evidence. He forgot, I said. No, Evelyn said. He likely assumed you forgot. That sentence filled me with a quiet fury. Warren had not just underestimated my emotions, he had underestimated my memory. He had underestimated the girl who grew up behind a hardware counter. He had underestimated Frank Caldwell's daughter. That evening, Warren found me in the kitchen sorting through recipes. "What are you doing now?" he asked. "Looking for my mother's lemon cake recipe. Why, I was thinking about her." He looked mildly irritated, as if my dead mother had inconvenienced him. "Well, don't get yourself upset." I looked at him. "I'm not upset." He glanced at the papers on the table, but they were only recipes. The real documents were already safe. "Good," he said. "You've been emotional enough lately." I smiled. This time it was not pretend. What he asked? Nothing. He frowned, but I kept smiling, because in that moment, I knew something he did not. My mother was in this house. My father was in this fight. My younger self had not vanished. She had only been waiting in a basement box wrapped in paper proof and a promise Warren had forgotten to destroy. Evelyn did not let the inheritance papers sit in a folder and gather dust. That was one thing I learned quickly about her. She did not waste time admiring evidence. She used it. 2 days after I uploaded the Caldwell documents, she called me from her office. "Teresa, I want to bring in a forensic accountant." I was standing in the laundry room matching Warren's socks. Even then, I was still matching his socks. "What does that mean?" I asked. It means we need someone trained to trace money. If Warren has moved funds, undervalued assets, created side accounts, or used business structures to hide marital property, a forensic accountant can help us see the trail. I looked down at the pair of black socks in my hands. A month earlier, words like marital property and forensic accountant would have sounded like someone else's life. Some wealthy woman on the news, some dramatic courtroom case. Not me. Not a retired teacher from Ohio with a casserole dish in the oven and dust on her baseboards. But Warren had dragged me into that world, so I had to learn its language. "Do it," I said. The accountant's name was Marcus Reed. He worked from a small firm outside downtown Columbus, and when Evelyn introduced us over a secure video call, he appeared on my screen wearing glasses, a dark sweater, and the calm expression of a man who had seen too many liars, believed they were clever. "Mrs. Fuller," he said. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "Teresa," I said. He nodded. "Teresa, my job is not to judge your marriage. My job is to follow the numbers." Follow the numbers. My father would have liked him. Evelyn had already sent him the documents I gathered, but Marcus needed more. Tax returns for the last 5 years, retirement account statements, investment summaries, brokerage documents, credit card records, mortgage papers, any old email involving Florida Sarasota Consulting Property, Denise Harper or Patricia Coleman. "That's a lot," I said. "It usually is," Marcus replied. "People rarely hide money in one dramatic place. They hide it in boring places. Transfers, fees, reimbursements, small account S, overstated debts, understated values." "It usually is," Marcus replied. "People rarely hide money in one dramatic place. They hide it in boring places. Transfers, fees, reimbursements, small accounts, overstated debts, understated values, boring places." That sounded like Warren. He loved boring. Boring made people stop looking. For the next week, I became a thief in my own life. Not stealing, recovering. That distinction mattered to me. I went through file cabinets while Warren was at golf. I checked the basement boxes while he went to the pharmacy. I downloaded statements from accounts where I still had legitimate access. I copied tax returns from folders I had prepared myself years earlier. Each time I touched a document, I felt a quiet humiliation. How had I filed all these papers and still allowed Warren to convince me I did not understand money? The answer was simple and ugly. Repetition. If someone tells you once that you are foolish, you may reject it. If they tell you for 30 years in small, polite ways, you may start handing them the pen when numbers appear on a page. Marcus noticed things quickly. The first call came on a Thursday afternoon. Warren was upstairs in the shower. I sat in my car in the driveway with the engine off, phone pressed to my ear, watching rainwater drip from the garage roof. Teresa Marcus said I found a pattern. My stomach tightened. "What kind of pattern?" "Transfers from your joint checking account into a money market account ending in 4419. "I don't know that account. It appears to be in Warren's name only." I closed my eyes. "How much?" "Not all at once. That's the point. Smaller amounts over 14 months. 5,000 here, 7,500 there. A few labeled tax reserve, a few labeled repair holdback, one labeled medical estimate. Medical estimate? That one cut deeper than I expected. I had gone through cancer screenings, surgeries, and hospital waiting rooms. Warren knew health fear had weight in our house. To use medical language as cover felt obscene. "What's the total?" I asked. "Just under $96,000 so far." I stopped breathing. 96,000. Money I had cooked through, cleaned around, budgeted under. Money from a marriage Warren described as his. "Are you sure I don't say numbers unless I'm sure?" I looked at the garage door. Behind it was the house I had helped buy with my mother's money. Above me, the man who had promised to honor that contribution was rinsing shampoo from his hair while hiding nearly 6 figures. "What else?" I asked. Marcus paused. I think there's more. Of course there was. There was always more once the first lie survived. A few days later, Marcus found the Sarasota connection. Warren had not simply taken trips. He had contributed funds toward a condominium project near the water. Not in his own name directly. That would have been too obvious. The investment moved through a small, limited liability company tied to a business associate from his CFO years. The LLC had a clean name. Gulf Meridian Holdings. I laughed when Marcus said it, not because it was funny, because it sounded exactly like Warren. Smooth, vague, respectable, the kind of name that could hide anything behind polished syllables. Do we know Denise's role? I asked. Her agency appears connected to the property listing and consulting fees, Marcus said. I'm still tracing payments, but there are multiple transfers marked consulting that appear to benefit her or her company. My hand tightened around the phone. So he paid her from our money. I cannot make that conclusion yet in legal terms, Marcus said carefully. But funds from marital accounts appear to have moved through channels connected to the Sarasota deal and to services associated with Denise Harper. Legal language. Soft edges. But I heard the truth underneath. Warren had not just given Denise his attention. He had given her access to our future. That night, I sat across from him at dinner while he ate baked chicken and talked about wine pairings for the anniversary party. I think Ridgway's Cabernet will work well, he said. I watched him cut his chicken. Small pieces, exact pieces. He had always eaten that way. Controlled even with a knife. Whatever you think is best, I said. He smiled. That's what I like to hear. I almost choked. After dinner, I went upstairs and stood in our bedroom closet. Warren's suits hung on the left, my dresses on the right. His shoes polished, mine pushed into corners. On the shelf above a blue storage box held old scarves and winter gloves. Behind that box was my new hiding place. I pulled out the folder Marcus had told me to keep updated. I added my notes from the call. Money market account ending 4419. Transfers over 14 months. Approximately $96,000. Gulf Meridian Holdings. Sarasota Condo Project. Denise Harper, Consulting Connection. I wrote slowly. Facts, not feelings. But the feelings came anyway. 14 months. That meant Warren had been dismantling our marriage while I wrapped his Christmas gifts. While we sat beside each other at Laura's daughter's choir concert. While Michael came over for the Super Bowl. While I made Warren soup when he had bronchitis. 14 months of me asking, do you need anything? And him thinking, yes. Your silence. Marcus's next discovery came from the tax records. Warren had reported one investment at a lower value than earlier documents suggested, not dramatically low, just low enough to matter later if assets were divided. He's creating a smaller picture, Marcus explained. Of what? Of the marital estate. The marital estate. I hated that phrase. It made our life sound like a file cabinet, but Warren had made it one. Marcus continued. People sometimes try to reduce the visible value before divorce. If one spouse doesn't question it, the settlement may be based on incomplete or inaccurate information, and he expected me not to question it. Marcus was silent for a beat. Yes. The answer was simple. Still it burned. Then came the worst call. I was in the parking lot behind the library holding a folder in my lap when Evelyn and Marcus called together. That was how I knew it was serious. Evelyn spoke first. Teresa Marcus found several documents connected to an investment transfer. They show your electronic signature. I frowned. My signature electronic authorization, Marcus said. Not handwritten, time-stamped, for what a partial transfer of beneficial interest from one investment account into a restructuring vehicle. It reduced what appears to be your claim or visibility on that asset. I did not understand every word, but I understood enough. I never signed that. Evelyn's voice stayed calm. When would this have been? Marcus gave the date and time. I sat still. Then I remembered. That was the church fundraiser, I said. Are you certain? Evelyn asked. Yes, I was at First Methodist from 5 until almost 9. I helped set up the silent auction. Laura was there. Pastor Robert was there. There are photos. Evelyn exhaled. Good. Save everything you can that proves that. My heart began pounding. Are you saying Warren signed for me? I am saying we have a document bearing your electronic authorization at a time you say you could not have authorized it. We need to verify how it was executed. That was Evelyn's way. Careful. Precise. No dramatic promises. But beneath her words was a door Warren had never meant to open. This was no longer only betrayal. This was no longer only divorce. This was something that could stain the clean, professional image he had spent his life polishing. For a moment, I felt no satisfaction, only cold. Because the man I married had not merely stopped loving me. He had become willing to use my name like a tool. I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. Hands that had held babies. Hands that had signed school forms. Hands that had written grocery lists, thank you notes, sympathy cards, lesson plans, checks for field trips and birthday cards to Warren's mother. Now my signature had appeared where I had not placed it. Something inside me went very still. When he hands me that agreement, I said, "Hell expect me to be shocked." Evelyn replied, "Yes, but he doesn't know we already have this." "No," she said, "he does not." I looked through the windshield at the library doors. An elderly man held the door for his wife. She smiled up at him, and he touched her elbow like she was precious. I had to look away. "Keep going," I said. Marcus answered, "We will." That night, Warren asked why I was quiet. We were in bed. His lamp was on. Mine was off. "Just tired," I said. He turned a page in his book. "You're always tired lately, so you've mentioned." He looked over. "There's no need for that tone." I turned toward him in the dark. "What tone, Warren?" His eyes narrowed. The defensive one. I almost smiled. He was still trying to name me before I could name him. But now, I had other names. Money market account. Gulf Meridian. Undervalued asset. Electronic signature. 14 months. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling. "You're right," I said softly. "No need." He watched me a moment longer, then returned to his book. He thought he had corrected me. He had no idea I had just chosen not to waste truth on a man who would soon be drowning in it. The next morning, I opened my spiral notebook and wrote one sentence at the top of a fresh page. Warren did not want a divorce. He wanted an escape route. Then I added another. Now we know where the footprints are. The closer we got to the anniversary party, the kinder Warren became. That frightened me more than his coldness ever had. Coldness was honest in its own ugly way. I knew what to do with silence. I knew how to stand in a kitchen while my husband read the news and treated my voice like background noise. But kindness, false kindness, is a locked room with perfume sprayed over the door. 3 days after Marcus found the electronic signature issue, Warren came home with a small velvet box. I was at the kitchen sink washing lettuce. He entered through the garage, set his keys in the bowl by the door, and stood there like a man waiting for applause. "For you," he said. I turned, hands wet. "What is it? Open it." His voice was light, almost playful. For 1 second, I saw the young Warren again. The one who once brought me a chipped blue mug from a roadside antique shop because I said it looked like the color of morning. The one who used to kiss the back of my neck when I cooked. Memory is cruel that way. It does not ask whether the person still deserves the sweetness it brings back. I dried my hands and opened the box. A pearl necklace lay inside. Simple, creamy white, expensive enough to impress guests, not personal enough to mean anything. It's beautiful, I said. Warren smiled. I thought you could wear it to the party. Simple, creamy white, expensive enough to impress guests, not personal enough to mean anything. It's beautiful, I said. Warren smiled. I thought you could wear it to the party. Of course. Not for me, for the scene. I lifted the necklace from the box. It felt cool against my fingers. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. That was the lie. He stepped behind me and took the necklace from my hands. Let me. My whole body stiffened as he moved my hair aside. His fingers brushed the back of my neck. Once that touch would have warmed me. Now it made me feel like I was being fitted for a role. The clasp clicked. There, he said softly. Elegant. I looked at myself in the dark kitchen window. A 62-year-old woman, gray at the temples, pearl necklace, tired eyes, mouth trained not to tremble. Warren stood behind me, smiling at his own reflection over my shoulder. You look like yourself again, Tess. My heart gave one hard beat. Myself, as if I had misplaced myself and he had returned me in pearls. Thank you, I said. He kissed my cheek. Dry, careful. A husband's kiss performed for an invisible audience. That night, I placed the necklace back in its box and wrote in my notebook, Warren bought pearl necklace for party, wants me to wear it. Image management. Then I sat there and stared at the words. Image management. That was what our marriage had become. Not love, not partnership, not even war. Optics. The next day, Warren suggested we look through old photo albums. That almost made me laugh. In 35 years, he had never voluntarily looked through albums unless someone was coming over, and he wanted to show the grandchildren how thin he used to be. Now he carried 3 albums into the living room and set them on the coffee table. I thought it might be nice, he said. Nice. For the party. Maybe we can choose a few photos for display. Display. Another word that did not belong inside love. I sat beside him on the couch. He opened the first album. There we were, our wedding day. My mother alive and smiling. My father standing stiff in his suit, trying not to cry. Warren and me cutting a leaning cake in a rented hall full of folding chairs and cheap flowers. Warren pointed to one picture. You were beautiful. I swallowed. I was happy. He turned the page too quickly. There was Laura as a baby, red-faced and furious in my arms. Michael in a Halloween costume with a crooked plastic sword. Christmas mornings, beach vacations, school plays, birthday candles. Proof that life had existed before betrayal. Warren paused at a photo from our 20th anniversary. We were standing in the backyard under string lights. I wore a green dress. He had his arm around me. Good years, he said. I looked at the picture. Yes, he sighed, and for a dangerous moment his face softened in a way that seemed real. Then he said, sometimes good years lead people to different places. There it was, a rehearsal line. I closed the album. I'm tired. His expression sharpened. Teresa. I said, I'm tired, Warren. Silence stretched between us. Then he smiled gently. Of course. You've been overwhelmed. I stood before he could say more. Upstairs, I locked myself in the bathroom and gripped the edge of the sink. Not crying, not yet. I was angry because he kept using our memories like props, as if our children's baby pictures, my mother's smile, my father's hands, and every Christmas morning could be arranged on a table beside a divorce agreement. That was when I understood the cruelty of his plan fully. He did not want to leave a marriage. He wanted to curate its funeral. 2 mornings later, Warren went golfing. This time, he actually dressed for golf. Polo shirt, windbreaker, golf shoes. He even carried his clubs to the car himself, which he rarely did, unless he wanted to appear vigorous. "I'll be back by 2, he said. "All right." He looked at me over his sunglasses. "Don't forget we have the final call with Ridgway at 4. "I won't forget." His mouth tightened slightly. "I'm only reminding you." "I know." He left. I watched his car back out of the driveway and waited until it disappeared around the corner. Then I went to his study. I did not run. Running feels guilty. I walked. The door was unlocked. The room smelled like him. Leather, paper, aftershave, control. I checked the desk first. Top drawer, pens, paper clips, mints, same as before. Second drawer, still locked. Third drawer, the Ridgway folder was gone. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I thought he had moved everything. Then I noticed the lower file cabinet was not fully closed. A thin corner of manila folder stuck out. I knelt and opened it. There were tax papers, old business contacts, golf club membership records, and beneath them, a large cream envelope. No writing on the front. Just thick paper. Expensive. I knew before I opened it. Still, my hands went cold. Inside was a divorce settlement agreement, prepared by Patricia Coleman, Warren Fuller, and Teresa Fuller. I sat back on my heels. The room seemed to tilt just as it had the day I found the note, but this time I did not freeze. I took out my phone and photographed the first page, then the second, then every page. Slowly, clearly, no shaking. The agreement was worse than I expected. Warren had written my disappearance in polite legal language. I would leave the marital residence within 60 days. I would accept a lump sum far below what Evelyn and Marcus had already shown I might be entitled to. I would waive further claim to certain investment accounts. I would agree not to pursue review of assets Warren identified as separate or business-related. I would agree to a joint public statement saying we had mutually and amicably decided to separate after many loving years. Loving years. I almost laughed out loud. Then I reached the confidentiality section. I would not make disparaging statements about Warren Fuller to family members, church members, business associates, social acquaintances, or any public platform. I would not contact Denise Harper directly or indirectly. I would not discuss alleged misconduct, financial disputes, or personal grievances, except through counsel. Alleged misconduct. There it was. Not a clean conscience, a prepared defense. Warren knew there was misconduct to hide. He knew Denise's name might surface. He knew I might speak. So he planned to shock me, shame me, hand me pearls, surround me with witnesses, and slide a document in front of me that would not only take my rights, but take my voice. I kept photographing. Page after page. My knees began to ache on the floor, but I did not move until every line was saved. At the back was a cover letter from Patricia Coleman. Warren, as discussed, timing and presentation are critical. Avoid language that implies coercion. Maintain calm tone. If Teresa becomes distressed, do not engage emotionally. Reframe as concern. I stopped breathing. Reframe as concern. Evelyn had been right. It was not only Warren's cruelty, it was strategy. I photographed the letter twice. Then I placed every page back in the envelope, aligned the corners, slid it into the folder, and returned it to the file cabinet exactly as I found it. When I stood, my legs felt weak. Not from fear, from fury. I went downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and called Evelyn. She answered on the second ring. Teresa. He has the agreement. What does it say? He wants me out of the house in 60 days. Low payout, waiver on investments, confidentiality, no disparaging comments, no contacting Denise, public statement saying it was mutual. Evelyn was quiet. Then she said, "Did you photograph it?" "Yes." "Every page?" "Yes." "Good. I heard paper move on her end. There's a cover letter," I said, "from Patricia. It says timing and presentation are critical. It says if I become distressed, he should reframe as concern." This time, Evelyn's silence changed. It became sharp. "Send that to me immediately." "I will." "Teresa, listen carefully. Do not react when he comes home. Do not mention the agreement. Do not ask about Patricia. Do not change your behavior." I looked at the pearl necklace box sitting on the sideboard. How am I supposed to sit across from him, one breath at a time? I closed my eyes. He was going to make me sign away my voice. Yes. I looked at the pearl necklace box sitting on the sideboard. How am I supposed to sit across from him, one breath at a time? I closed my eyes. He was going to make me sign away my voice. Yes, Evelyn said, but now we know exactly what he wants. And what do I do with that? Her answer came calm and cold. Now we make sure you have your own envelope. I opened my eyes. My own envelope. Yes, Warren has prepared a surprise. We will prepare yours. For the first time in days, I felt something like power move through my chest. Not happiness, not revenge. Power. Quiet and controlled. The kind Warren had never believed I could hold. When he came home at 2:15, I was making tuna salad. He stepped into the kitchen and smiled. "Miss me?" I looked up. No more than usual. He laughed, thinking I had made a joke. Then he kissed the top of my head and opened the refrigerator. "Don't forget our call at 4. I spread tuna salad onto bread. "I won't." He leaned against the counter. "You seem better today." I placed the second slice of bread on top and cut the sandwich cleanly in half. "I feel clearer." He smiled. Good. He thought clear meant calm. He thought calm meant defeated. That was his mistake. At 4, we spoke with Ridgway House about Flower's wine timing, cake placement, and microphone access. Warren wanted a microphone for a few words. The event manager said, "Of course, Mr. Fuller. We'll have it ready after dessert." After dessert. So that was when he planned to do it. Sweetness first, destruction after. I wrote it down later. Microphone after dessert. Agreement in cream envelope. 60 days to leave. Silence clause. Reframe distress as concern. Then I added one more line. He thinks the envelope ends the story. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I crossed out ends and wrote, he thinks the envelope controls the story. That was more accurate. Warren did not simply want a divorce. He wanted authorship. He wanted to write me as unstable, grateful, quiet, and gone. But he had forgotten something. I was a teacher once. I knew how to correct a false story. Red pen, steady hand, no apology. Evelyn was right. Warren had his envelope. So I needed mine. Only mine was not going to be a trap. It was not going to be a performance dressed up as courage. It was not going to ask anyone to feel sorry for me. My envelope was going to hold facts. That week, my life became quieter on the outside and sharper underneath. Warren thought I was helping him prepare for an anniversary party. In one way, I suppose I was. I confirmed Laura's arrival time. I told Michael the restaurant had valet parking. I chose shoes that would not hurt my feet because I knew I might need to stand for longer than Warren expected. I even tried on the pearl necklace. Warren stood in the doorway of our bedroom while I looked in the mirror. "Yes," he said, "wear that." Not, "You look beautiful." Not, "Do you like it? Wear that." Like a costume note. I touched the pearls at my throat. I was thinking of wearing my navy dress. His face tightened slightly. The Syria, his face tightened slightly. The Sirius. One. Yes. I thought maybe something softer. I looked at his reflection. At 62, Warren, I think I've earned Sirius. For a moment, he did not answer. Then he gave that thin smile. "Whatever makes you comfortable, Swan." Yes, I thought maybe something softer. I looked at his reflection. At 62, Warren, I think I've earned Sirius. For a moment, he did not answer. Then he gave that thin smile. "Whatever makes you comfortable." Comfortable. Another lie. Nothing about that night was meant to make me comfortable. The navy dress hung at the back of my closet. Warren had always disliked it. He once told me it made me look like I was about to chair a committee. I took that as an insult then. Now I took it as a recommendation. If Warren wanted me soft, fragile, and easy to fold, I would arrive looking like a woman who understood documents. On Monday morning, I met Evelyn at her office. Not by video, in person. I told Warren I had a dental cleaning. He did not look up from his tablet. Again, "My gums are important." He frowned, unsure whether I was joking. I left before he decided. Evelyn's conference room was small, with a long table, a pitcher of water, and a box of tissues nobody mentioned. Marcus Reed was already there, sitting with a laptop open and a stack of neatly tabbed papers. Seeing those tabs made my stomach tighten. My life had become evidence with colored labels. Evelyn greeted me first. "How are you holding up?" I sat down and placed my purse on the floor. "I don't know anymore." That is an honest answer. Marcus nodded. "Honest is useful." I almost smiled. These were not warm people in the usual sense. They did not hug me. They did not call Warren names. They did not tell me everything would be fine. But they steadied me. Evelyn slid a folder across the table. "This is the divorce complaint." The words landed heavily. Divorce complaint. Not the secret agreement Warren wanted me to sign. Not the public statement about loving years. My filing. My voice entering the legal record before Warren could silence it. I opened the folder. There was my name, Teresa Caldwell Fuller. I had not seen my maiden name included in a formal document in years. For some reason, that nearly undid me. Evelyn noticed. "We included Caldwell because of the inheritance documentation," she said gently. I nodded. But it was more than that. Caldwell was my father's hand on my shoulder. My mother's money. The girl behind the hardware counter. The woman Warren thought he had buried under 35 years of marriage. I read as much as I could. I did not understand every sentence, but Evelyn explained without making me feel stupid. The filing requested a fair division of marital property. It preserved claims related to hidden or transferred assets. It referenced concerns regarding financial activity investment accounts and unauthorized electronic authorization pending investigation. It did not scream. It did not beg. It stood. That mattered. Marcus then showed me a simplified timeline. He had made it for me, but also eventually for anyone who needed the truth quickly. 14 months of transfers. Sarasota travel. Payments connected to Denise Harper. Gulf Meridian Holdings. The $18,000 home repair. the undervalued investment, the electronic signature timestamp, the anniversary party reservation, the agreement Warren planned to present. Each line was clean. Each line was a nail in the frame of the story Warren had built. I looked at Marcus. Will people understand this? People understand patterns, he said, especially when the pattern is shown clearly. Evelyn leaned forward. Teresa, the goal is not to turn the party into a courtroom. We are not trying your case in a restaurant. I know, but if Warren attempts to ambush you publicly, you need a controlled response. Short, calm. No accusations you cannot support in that moment. No long explanations. No naming every detail. That last part was hard, because I wanted to name everything. Denise, the money, the signature, the lies, the way he made Michael doubt me, the way he turned concern into a cage. Evelyn saw it on my face. I know, she said, but power is not saying everything. Power is saying enough. I wrote that down. Power is saying enough. Then she told me her plan. The filing would be prepared and ready. Depending on timing, it could be filed before the party. She wanted the protective financial motions ready as well. Marcus would continue compiling the asset concerns. Evelyn would attend the anniversary dinner as an old friend from church introduced through a loose connection to a women's charity where I had once volunteered. That part made me nervous. What if Warren recognizes you? He has likely never seen me, Evelyn said. And even if he has, men like Warren often do not notice women they are not trying to impress. Marcus coughed once, hiding a smile. I did not hide mine. What about you? I asked him. I'll be nearby, Marcus said. Not in the room unless needed. Ridgeway has a bar outside the private dining area. I can be there with my laptop. You're coming to the restaurant? Yes. Why? In case something happens and Evelyn needs immediate confirmation of a number or document. I looked between them. You both think he'll do it? Evelyn's face was steady. I think Warren has invested too much in this performance to walk away from it. That was true. Warren did not abandon a stage once he had built it. After that, we prepared the envelopes for Laura and Michael. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the legal filing, not the asset timeline, not even the copy of Warren's agreement. The children. Evelyn advised against overwhelming them with everything. They need enough to understand that you are not reacting out of confusion, she said. They do not need every ugly detail in the first 5 minutes. So we made 2 envelopes, one for Laura, one for Michael. Inside each was a short letter from me. I wrote it by hand because I wanted them to feel their mother in the words. My first draft was too emotional. Evelyn did not say that. She simply read it and asked, what do you most need them to know in the moment? So I tried again. Laura, Michael, I am sorry you are learning any of this in such a painful way. I did not want to involve you before I had facts. I am not asking you to choose a parent tonight. I am asking you to pause before believing any story that says I am confused, unstable, or acting out of emotion. I have legal counsel. I have financial records. I have known more than your father realized. I love you both more than any house, any account, any reputation, or any marriage. Mom. I stared at the word mom for a long time. Then I folded the letters carefully. We included copies of a few key items. Not everything, just enough. The note from Warren's golf book anniversary party announcement bring agreement, the fake home repair withdrawal, the Ridgeway reservation detail, a short timeline of transfers, the electronic signature concern stated carefully. Not a war file, a flashlight. By the time I left Evelyn's office, my body felt heavy, but my mind felt clean. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and called Laura. "Mom, can you talk?" "Yes." "What happened?" "Nothing yet. I need you to listen." Her breathing changed. "Okay, the party is still happening. I need you there. I need you to say nothing to your father beforehand. No hints? No questions? No warnings?" "I won't. If something happens, I need you to stay calm." "Mom, you're scaring me." "I'm scared too, but I am prepared." A long silence. Then she said, "Will you be alone?" I looked at Evelyn's office building through the windshield. "No." That was all I could safely say. When I got home, Warren was in the kitchen eating grapes from a bowl. "How was the dentist?" "Fine." "No cavities?" he asked, amused. At my age, every intact tooth feels like a victory. He laughed. It sounded almost real. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down. His face softened. "Not for me. Never for me anymore." He turned the screen away and said, "I need to take this." He walked to the porch. I watched him go. This time, I did not follow. I did not need to hear the call. Denise could have his whispers. Patricia could have his rehearsed phrases. The porch could have his lies. I had enough. That evening, while Warren showered, my phone lit up. Unknown number. Then a text appeared. "I hope you handle tonight with grace." No name, but I knew. Denise. My first reaction was not anger. It was wonder. The arrogance of it. This woman who had watched from the edge of my marriage while Warren moved money and rehearsed my humiliation was asking me to be graceful. Grace to some people means a woman bleeding quietly so others can stay comfortable. I took a screenshot, sent it to Evelyn. Then I wrote the number in my notebook. When Warren came downstairs, I was putting on hand lotion. He looked relaxed. "Everything all right?" I rubbed lotion into my fingers. "Yes." The party was tomorrow. 24 hours. One day between the life Warren thought he controlled and the truth waiting just outside the private dining room. That night, I hung the navy dress on the closet door. I placed the pearl necklace beside it. Not because I wanted to wear Warren's gift, because I wanted him to see it and believe his scene was still intact. Then I packed my own envelope in my purse, cream-colored, simple. Inside were copies, not originals, facts, not fury, enough, not everything. Before bed, Warren stood beside the dress and nodded. "Good choice," he said. "Very dignified." I looked at him. Dignity matters. He smiled, missing the warning completely. "Yes," he said, "it does." I slept only 2 hours that night, but when morning came, I did not wake up broken. I woke up ready. The day of the anniversary party arrived bright and cold. I remember that clearly. Sunlight came through the bedroom curtains like nothing terrible was waiting. The house was quiet. Warren was already downstairs, humming. Humming. A man planning to end a 35-year marriage in public was humming in the kitchen. I stood in front of the mirror, wearing my robe, looking at my own face. I did not look dramatic. I did not look like a woman in a movie before a great confrontation. I looked tired, older than I had looked the week before. My eyes had shadows beneath them. My mouth was too tight, but I was still standing. That counted for something. I dressed slowly. Navy dress, low heels, small earrings, pearl necklace. I nearly left the pearls in the box. Part of me hated the idea of wearing anything Warren had chosen for his little scene. But then I changed my mind. Let him look at them. Let him believe I was still dressed for the role he had written. The necklace sat cold against my throat. In my purse, my envelope waited. Copies of the filing notice. Key facts. The letters for Laura and Michael. Evelyn's card. A copy of Warren's planned agreement, just enough to prove I knew. not everything. Enough. That word had become a weapon in my hand. When I came downstairs, Warren was standing by the front window in a dark suit. He looked handsome. I will not lie about that. Betrayal does not always make a man ugly on the outside. Sometimes it polishes him. He turned when he heard me. For a second, his eyes moved over me with satisfaction. There he said, "Perfect, perfect. Not beautiful, not Teresa. Perfect." I smiled. "You look pleased." "I am," he said. "Tonight matters." "Yes," I said. "It does." He walked toward me and adjusted one pearl near my collarbone. "You nervous?" "No." His fingers paused. "No," I looked directly at him. "Should I be?" He smiled. "Of course not. I just know you can get emotional at big family events." There it was, one final note before curtain. I picked up my purse. "I'll manage." He gave a soft laugh. "I'm sure you will." On the drive to Ridgeway House, Warren talked more than usual. That was how I knew he was excited. Not nervous. Excited. He mentioned the menu again. He mentioned the cake. He mentioned the microphone. I prepared a few words he said casually. I looked out the passenger window at the Columbus Street sliding past. Restaurants, gas stations, bare trees. People living ordinary Friday evenings. That's nice. I think people appreciate honesty when it's delivered with dignity. I turned to him. Do they? His hands tightened slightly on the wheel. I believe so. I nodded. I suppose we'll find out. He glanced at me, then quick and sharp, but my face was calm. By the time we pulled up to Ridgeway House, the sun had dipped low. The restaurant glowed from inside all warm windows and expensive quiet. Valet attendants moved around polished cars. Through the glass doors I could see soft lamps, dark wood, and women in nice coats laughing as if life were safe. Warren came around and opened my door. For the audience. There was always an audience with Warren, even before the guests arrived. He offered his hand. I took it. His palm was warm. Mine was steady. The private dining room was at the back of the restaurant. I had seen photos online, but in person it looked even more polished. White tablecloths, low candles, small vases of white roses, framed black and white photographs on the walls. A long table arranged in a U shape, as if everyone had been placed to watch the center. Our center. Near the dessert table was a cake. White frosting, silver trim, 35 years of love. I stared at those words longer than I meant to. Warren noticed. Beautiful, isn't it? Yes, I said, very convincing. He looked at me. What? I said it's very beautiful. He accepted that because he wanted to. Guests began arriving. First Tom and Elaine Wilkes from next door. Elaine hugged me and whispered, 35 years. You two give the rest of us hope. I hugged her back. Her perfume smelled like lilacs. I wondered if she would remember that sentence later and feel foolish. I hoped not. None of this was her fault. Then, Marjorie Collins from church arrived, wearing a purple scarf and carrying a card. Pastor Robert Jenkins came in with his wife Helen. He smiled warmly at Warren, then at me. Teresa, he said, taking both my hands. What a wonderful milestone. My throat tightened. It is certainly a milestone. His eyes searched mine for half a second. Perhaps Laura had inherited her sensitivity from somewhere older than me. Perhaps Pastor Robert, after decades of hearing people speak in half-truths, knew when a woman's smile did not reach the rest of her face. But he said nothing. Not yet. Laura arrived with Mark. The moment she saw me, her face changed. Not dramatically. Laura was too careful for that, but her eyes filled, then steadied. She hugged Warren first because he reached for her first. "My girl," he said warmly. Then she came to me. Her arms tightened around me. "I'm here," she whispered. 2 words. I had to close my eyes. "I know," I whispered back. Mark kissed my cheek and looked confused but kind. Laura had probably told him only enough to make sure he stayed alert. Then Michael arrived. He came alone, wearing a gray suit and the serious expression he used at work. He shook Warren's hand first. Warren held on to him a moment too long. "Good to see you, son." "You too, Dad." Then Michael turned to me. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart." He hugged me, but he was stiff. That hurt more than I expected. Warren had done his work well. Michael looked at me as if I were fragile glass and a lit match at the same time. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I touched his arm. "I am." He did not fully believe me. Not yet. The room filled slowly. Warren's business friends laughed too loudly. The golf club couples admired the flowers. Someone asked who had chosen the cake, and Warren said, "I handled most of tonight. Teresa deserves to be celebrated." That sentence drew smiles. I felt Laura's eyes on me from across the room. I gave her the smallest nod. Not yet. Dinner began. Warren sat beside me at the center of the table. Laura was on my left. Michael was on Warren's right. Pastor Robert sat across from us exactly as the seating chart had shown. A trap with candles. The salad arrived first. People chatted about grandchildren, travel retirement, church renovations, the weather. Forks touched plates. Wine was poured. Warren kept placing his hand over mine for brief moments, each touch carefully timed when someone looked our way. Every time I let him. Every time I thought, let the camera see. At first, I did not know where the camera was. Then, halfway through dinner, I saw him. A young man in a black shirt near the corner of the room, adjusting a small camera on a tripod. Not large. Not obvious. Professional enough to catch sound and faces discreet enough to pretend it was normal. My stomach hardened. I leaned toward Warren. "You hired someone to film?" He smiled without looking at me. "Just a few moments. For the family, for the family." Memories. Tess. Memories. I looked at the camera, then at Warren. He had not just planned to humiliate me. He had planned to record me. A recorded breakdown, a trembling wife, a distressed reaction. Proof for anyone who later doubted his story. I lifted my water glass and took a slow sip. My hand did not shake. Across the table, Pastor Robert also looked at the camera. Then he looked at Warren, then at me. Something shifted in his expression. Dessert came. The cake was rolled in on a silver cart. People clapped. Warren stood and gave the first toast. His voice was smooth, warm, perfectly measured. "When Teresa and I married 35 years ago," he began, "we had very little except hope." Guests smiled. Laura stared at the table. Michael watched his father with complicated pride. Warren continued. He told the story of our first apartment, the leaky sink, the old Chevy, the first Christmas when we could barely afford gifts. He mentioned Laura's birth, Michael's Little League games, church picnics, vacations, hard years, good years. He sounded like a loving husband. That was the terrible part. If I had not known, I might have cried. Everyone else nearly did. Elaine wiped her eyes. Marjorie pressed a hand to her chest. One of Warren's business friends said, "Beautiful." Warren looked down at me. "To Teresa." he said, raising his glass. For 35 unforgettable years. Everyone raised their glasses. I raised mine too. To truth, I said softly. Only Laura heard me. Her hand found mine under the table. After the toast, people ate cake. Vanilla with raspberry filling. Denise's favorite. I took one bite. It tasted like sugar and insult. Then I looked through the open doorway toward the bar outside the private room. There she was, Denise Harper. Not inside the room. Not officially present. But there seated at the bar in a cream blazer, one leg crossed over the other, a glass of white wine in front of her. She looked polished. Calm. Expectant. Like a woman waiting for a house to be vacated. Our eyes met. She did not look away. That was her mistake. Because in that moment, something in me stopped hurting and started watching. Warren saw her too. Just for a second. His eyes flicked toward the doorway, then back to the room. But I caught it. So did Laura. Her face went pale. I squeezed her hand once. Not yet. The plates were cleared. Coffee was poured. The young cameraman adjusted his lens. A server carried a small microphone to Warren. The room quieted naturally the way people quiet when they sense another speech coming. Warren stood. He buttoned his jacket. His right hand touched the inside pocket. The envelope. My heart began to pound, not with fear, with recognition. This was the moment he had rehearsed, the moment Patricia had advised, the moment Denise had waited for, the moment Michael had been prepared to interpret, the moment Laura had feared, the moment Warren believed would end me. He took the microphone. Everyone, he said, smiling sadly. If I could have your attention for just a few more minutes, there is something important Teresa and I need to share. The room went still. Laura stopped breathing beside me. Michael straightened in his chair. Pastor Robert lowered his coffee cup. The camera's red light blinked. Warren looked down at me with practiced sorrow. And I placed my hand on my purse. My envelope was still there. Waiting. Warren stood with the microphone in one hand and his other hand resting near the inside pocket of his jacket. I knew that pocket. I knew what waited there. A cream envelope, thick paper, polite language. 60 days to leave my home. A low payout, a silence clause. A version of my life that required me to disappear gently so Warren could look honorable. The room was so quiet, I could hear the ice shifting in someone's water glass. Warren smiled at our guests with the sad tenderness of a man pretending to suffer nobly. Tonight, he began, has been a celebration of 35 years. 35 years of family faith work sacrifice and memories Teresa and I will always share. His voice was perfect, soft, controlled. The camera's red light blinked from the corner. I watched it for half a second and thought, good. Keep recording, Warren continued. But life, as many of you know, changes. People change. Marriage changes. And sometimes, the most loving thing two people can do is be honest about the season they are in. Laura's hand tightened around mine beneath the table. Michael stared at his father. Pastor Robert's face had gone still. Warren looked down at me. His eyes were warm for the room and cold for me. Teresa and I have reached a difficult place, he said. And although this is painful, I believe truth must be faced with dignity. Dignity. He had stolen the word from me before I even stood. A few guests shifted in their chairs. Elaine Wilkes pressed her hand to her mouth. One of Warren's old business friends lowered his eyes, already preparing to respect whatever Warren said next. That was how easy it was. A calm man could rewrite a woman's life in front of witnesses if his voice did not shake. Warren reached into his jacket. The envelope began to appear. And that was when I stood. Not quickly, not dramatically. I simply rose from my chair, smoothing the front of my navy dress with both hands. The chair legs made a small sound against the floor. Warren stopped. Every face turned toward me. For 1 second, he looked annoyed. Not afraid. Annoyed. Like an actress had missed her cue. "Tess," he said gently into the microphone. "Maybe sit down. This is emotional, I know." There it was. Reframe as concern. I smiled. Not sweetly. Calmly. "Before you hand me whatever is in that envelope, Warren, I think our guests deserve the whole truth." The room froze. It was not silence anymore. It was impact. Warren's smile remained, but his eyes changed. "Teresa," he said softly, "this is not the time." I looked at the camera. "Actually," I said, "I believe this is exactly the time you chose." A murmur moved through the room. Warren lowered the microphone slightly. "I think you're overwhelmed." "No," I said. "I am informed." That word did what shouting could not have done. It cut. Warren stared at me. I reached into my purse and took out my own envelope. For the first time that night, his face lost color. Not much. Warren had trained himself well. But I saw it. Laura saw it. And I think Pastor Robert saw it too. I did not raise my voice. I learned several weeks ago that my husband planned to use this anniversary dinner to announce a divorce in front of our children, our pastor, our neighbors, and his friends. I also learned that he planned to present me with an agreement while I was shocked and surrounded by people I love. Teresa Warren snapped, forgetting the microphone was still near his mouth. His sharp tone echoed through the speakers. Several people flinched. I looked at him. "There you are," I said. Laura made a small sound beside me, half sob and half breath. Warren recovered quickly. "This is exactly what I was concerned about," he said to the room. "She has been under a great deal of stress." I nodded. "That is what he has been telling some of you. That I am emotional, forgetful, overwhelmed, maybe unstable. That way, if I reacted tonight, you would see my pain as proof of his story." Michael's head turned slowly toward his father. Warren's jaw tightened. "You are embarrassing yourself." "No," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I am refusing to be embarrassed for someone else's choices." The microphone remained in Warren's hand, but the room was no longer his. I opened my envelope and removed one sheet. "I am not going to discuss every private detail of our marriage in this restaurant. I will not turn this room into a courtroom. But I will say this clearly. I have legal counsel. A divorce complaint has already been prepared and filed. Financial records are being reviewed. Transfers, investment accounts, and documents bearing my electronic authorization are being examined through the proper legal channels." Warren looked as if I had slapped him. I had not raised a hand. That made it cleaner. His voice dropped. "You filed?" "Yes. You had no right." I tilted my head. No right to file for divorce from a man who planned to surprise me with one beside a cake. A few guests gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" From the doorway, I saw Denise Harper stand up at the bar. She had heard enough to know the show was no longer safe. "Good." Warren took one step closer. "Teresa, stop this now." I looked at the envelope in his hand. "Is that the agreement requiring me to leave my home in 60 days? The room stirred again. Warren's mouth opened, but no answer came. "Is that the agreement where I accept far less than what I may be legally entitled to?" "Enough," he said. "Is that the agreement where I promise not to speak about you to family church members business associates, social acquaintances, or any public platform. Pastor Robert looked down. Elaine whispered, "Warren?" He ignored her. His eyes were fixed on me with a fury I had seen before only in private. But now the camera was still recording. I turned slightly toward the guests. I did not come here to humiliate my husband. He arranged this evening. He chose the audience. He chose the timing. He chose the microphone. I chose not to be silenced. Then the door to the private room opened wider. Evelyn Marks stepped inside. She wore a dark green dress and carried a slim folder. She did not rush. She did not perform. She moved with the calm of a woman who had walked into many rooms where men thought volume was power. Warren looked at her. "Who are you?" Evelyn stopped beside me. "My name is Evelyn Marks. I represent Teresa Fuller." The words seemed to hit Warren physically. He stared at her, then at me. "You brought a lawyer." I looked at the envelope in his hand. "You did too." "Mine is simply present." A few people gasped again, but Evelyn remained perfectly calm. She held out the folder. "Mr. Fuller, you are being served with notice of the divorce filing and related financial preservation requests. Formal service documentation will proceed through appropriate channels, but you should consider yourself on notice not to transfer, conceal, dispose of, or alter marital assets or relevant records." Warren did not take the folder. For one terrible second, I thought he might throw the microphone. Not at anyone, maybe, but down. Hard, like a man losing control. Instead, he looked around the room. That was when he realized the stage had turned. His old business friends were no longer nodding with sympathy. Elaine was staring at him with tears in her eyes. Marjorie's hand rested over her cross necklace. Pastor Robert looked deeply sad, but not surprised. Laura was standing now. Michael was still seated, but his face had changed. Confusion had cracked open into suspicion. Warren finally took the folder from Evelyn. His fingers were stiff. "This is absurd," he said. Evelyn replied, "Then the records will clarify it." That was the most beautiful sentence I had heard in months. The records will clarify it. Not tears, not gossip, not Warren's tone. Records, facts, truth. Warren looked at me with pure hatred for one brief second. Then he remembered the room and covered it with sorrow. "I wanted to handle this with grace," he said. I thought of Denise's text. "I hope you handle tonight with grace." I looked toward the bar. Denise was frozen halfway between her stool and the exit cream blazer, bright against the dark wood. "Grace," I said, "does not mean letting someone lie about you politely." Warren followed my gaze. So did half the room. Denise turned and walked quickly toward the front of the restaurant. Laura saw her. Michael saw Laura see her, and Warren saw them both. The trap had not merely failed, it had exposed its builder. I turned back to Warren and lowered my voice, though everyone could still hear me. "You said I would not fight." His face went still. I had never told him I heard that call. Now he knew. "I decided you were right," I said. "I was not going to fight the way you expected. I was not going to scream. I was not going to beg. I was not going to give you the reaction you needed." My hand rested over my envelope. I was going to prepare. The room remained silent. Even the camera operator looked stunned. Warren's microphone hung at his side. The man who had planned to announce the end of my marriage had no words left that helped him, so I gave him the ending he had not prepared for. "I will not sign your agreement tonight," I said. "I will not leave my home because you arranged an audience. I will not allow my children to hear only your version. and I will not let you call humiliation honesty." Then I turned to our guests. "I am sorry you were brought into this. I did not invite you into our pain. Warren did." No one spoke. That silence was different. It no longer belonged to him. I picked up my purse. Laura stood beside me. Evelyn remained at my other side. And for the first time in 35 years, I walked away from Warren Fuller while he was still waiting for me to ask permission. For a moment after I spoke, no one moved. It was strange how quiet a room could become after truth entered it. Not peaceful, not calm, just stunned. The candles still flickered. Coffee still steamed in little white cups. The cake still sat on the dessert table with those silver words shining under the lights. 35 years of love. But nothing in that room looked romantic anymore. Warren stood near the center with Evelyn's folder in one hand and his own envelope in the other. The microphone hung loosely at his side. His face had gone pale, but his eyes were burning. I had seen that look before. Never in public, only at home. When I questioned a charge, when I corrected a story, when I remembered something he hoped I had forgotten. But this time, he could not close the kitchen door. He could not lower his voice and make me doubt myself. He could not turn his back and wait for me to apologize just to restore peace. The whole room had heard him. The whole room had seen me stand, and the camera was still recording. Warren realized that at the same time I did. He turned toward the young cameraman. "Turn that off," he snapped. The young man froze. Warren's voice cracked across the room. "I said turn it off." The cameraman reached toward the equipment, but Evelyn lifted one hand. "I would advise preserving that recording," she said evenly, "given the circumstances." Warren spun toward her. "You don't advise anyone here. This is a private family event." Evelyn did not blink. "A private family event where you hired a videographer." A few guests looked at the camera, then at Warren. That small shift mattered. One more piece of his plan became visible. He had not invited them to celebrate me. He had invited them to witness me. Warren tried to recover. He turned back to the room and lifted his free hand, as if calming a board meeting. "I apologize," he said, voice thick but controlled again. "This is exactly the kind of reaction I feared. Teresa has been struggling for some time, and I had hoped to handle this with compassion." Laura stepped forward. "No," her voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a glass breaking. Warren looked at her. "Laura, honey." "Don't," she said. His face tightened. "Don't what? Don't use that voice with me while you're lying about Mom." I felt the breath leave my chest. For years, Laura had been the peacemaker, the one who softened conversations, the one who changed subjects before tension became open conflict. But that night, my daughter did not soften anything. She came to stand beside me. "She is not confused," Laura said. "She is not unstable. She is the calmest person in this room." Warren's mouth flattened. "You don't understand what has been happening." "No," Laura said. "I think I'm finally starting to." Michael stood then. Not beside me, not beside Warren, just stood. His face was pale, his eyes moving between all of us. "Dad," he said quietly. "What agreement is she talking about?" Warren shifted. "This is not the place." Michael looked at the envelope in Warren's hand. "You were going to give her papers tonight." Warren's jaw worked once. "I was going to discuss a difficult matter with dignity. At an anniversary party." Silence. Michael's voice changed. It lost its businesslike polish. Underneath was the boy who once came to me with a scraped knee. "You asked me to support the reasonable path." Warren's eyes flashed. "Because I knew this would be hard on your mother." Michael looked at me, then at Laura, then back to Warren. You told me she might react emotionally. She is reacting emotionally. No, Michael said slowly. You are. That sentence hit Warren harder than anything I had said, because Michael was supposed to be his, not legally, not cruelly, but in Warren's mind, Michael was the witness he had prepared most carefully. The practical son. The son who admired him. The son who believed calm meant truth. I reached into my purse and took out the 2 envelopes I had prepared. My hands trembled for the first time that night. Not from fear of Warren, from fear of hurting my children. Laura, I said softly. Michael, I need you both to have these. Laura took hers immediately. Michael hesitated. That hesitation hurt, but I understood it. His whole image of his father was cracking in front of him. A person does not thank you for breaking a statue even if the statue was hollow. Finally, he took the envelope. Warren stepped forward. Do not drag them into this. I turned to him. You did that when you invited them here. He did that when you invited them here. He had no answer. Laura opened her envelope first. Her hands moved quickly, but her eyes filled as she read the letter. Then she saw the copy of Warren's note. Anniversary party had no answer. Laura opened her envelope first. Her hands moved quickly, but her eyes filled as she read the letter. Then she saw the copy of Warren's note. Anniversary party. Announcement. Bring agreement. Her lips parted. Oh, Dad, she whispered, not angry, worse, disappointed. Michael pulled out the same page from his envelope. He stared at it. Then he looked at Warren. You wrote this? Warren said nothing. Michael kept reading. The fake home repair withdrawal, the timeline of transfers, the electronic signature concern. His face changed line by line. It was like watching fog burn off and reveal wreckage. Mom, he said, voice rough, is this real? I nodded. The full records are with my lawyer and accountant. I did not want either of you trapped between rumors. I wanted you to see in between rumors. I wanted you to see an auk to understand why I waited. Michael swallowed. You didn't tell me because you thought I'd tell him. I could have lied to protect him. I chose not to. I was afraid you might, I said, not to hurt me, because you trusted him. To understand why I waited. Michael swallowed. You didn't tell me because you thought I'd tell him. I could have lied to protect him. I chose not to. I was afraid you might, I said, not to hurt me, because you trusted him. His eyes filled. That was the moment my heart broke in a new way. Not for my marriage, for my son, because he looked like a little boy realizing the tallest man in the room had led him the wrong way. Warren moved toward Michael. Son, listen to me. Your mother is presenting selected information without context. Michael stepped back. Just one step, but Warren saw it. So did I. Then give the context, Michael said. Warren's mouth opened. No words came, because the context was Denise at the bar. The context was the agreement in his hand. The context was the videographer, the cake, the seating chart, the microphone after dessert. The context was the trap. At the doorway, Denise tried to leave. Laura saw her first. Her head snapped toward the bar. That's her, isn't it? The room followed Laura's gaze. Denise froze near the hallway, one hand on her purse strap. She looked suddenly less polished, less certain. The cream blazer that had seemed so elegant earlier now looked too bright, like a spotlight had found her. Warren's face hardened. Laura, that is enough. But Laura did not look at him. She looked at Denise. "You texted my mother, didn't you?" Denise's face changed, only slightly. "But enough." Michael turned toward me. What text? I took out my phone, opened the screenshot, and handed it to Laura first. Laura read it aloud. "I hope you handle tonight with grace." A sound moved through the guests. Not a gasp exactly. More like disgust finding breath. Denise looked at Warren. Warren looked away. That told everyone more than a confession could have. No one shouted at Denise. No one threw wine. No one called her names. The silence did the work. She turned and walked quickly down the hallway. This time, no one mistook her for a business associate. Warren's careful world was collapsing not with drama, but with recognition. Then Pastor Robert stood. He was not a dramatic man. He was in his late 60s, with gentle hands and a voice that usually made even church announcements sound tender. But when he stood that night, the room paid attention. "Warren," he said quietly. Warren's face tightened. "Pastor, I'd rather not, I know," Pastor Robert said. "But you invited me." That sentence settled over the room. Warren had invited him as moral decoration. Now morality had spoken back. Pastor Robert looked at the cake, then at Warren, then at me. "I do not know every private detail of this marriage," he said, "and I will not pretend that I do. But I know this: truth does not need a trap. Compassion does not require an audience. And dignity is not preserved by arranging another person's humiliation." No one breathed. Pastor Robert continued, "A beautiful speech cannot cover an ugly act. Not in a marriage, not in a church, not before God." Marjorie began to cry softly. Elaine looked at me and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded once. I did not need apologies from people who had been fooled by the same man who fooled me for years. Warren's mask slipped again. "Are all of you really going to stand here and judge me based on Teresa's performance?" Michael looked at him. "Dad, you hired the camera." That was the line that ended it. Not legally, not officially, but socially, emotionally, completely. Warren looked around and found no rescue. His old business friends avoided his eyes. The golf club couple whispered to each other. Pastor Robert remained standing. Laura was beside me. Michael was no longer beside anyone, but he was no longer beside Warren. I could see Warren calculating. Could he salvage sympathy? Could he blame stress? Could he say, "I had misunderstood"? Could he turn Denise into a minor mistake and the money into technicalities? Maybe later. Not in that room. Not with the envelope still in his hand. I turned to Evelyn. "I'm ready to leave." She nodded. Laura took my arm. Michael stepped toward me, then stopped. "Mom," he said. I looked at him. "I'm sorry." Those two words nearly undid me, not because they fixed anything, because I heard the child inside them. I reached out and touched his cheek the same way I had when he was small. "I know." He closed his eyes briefly. "I should have believed you were lied to," I said. "We will talk later." He nodded, crying now, though he tried to hide it. Warren watched us with an expression I could not fully name. Anger, panic, betrayal. As if we had betrayed him by refusing to stay inside the roles he assigned us. I picked up my purse. Before leaving, I looked once more at the cake. 35 years of love. For most of the night, those words had felt like a mockery. Now they felt like a question. Had there been love? Yes, at least from me. That mattered. Not because it saved the marriage, but because it reminded me I had not been foolish for loving. I had been human. Warren's cruelty did not erase my sincerity. I turned away from the cake. At the doorway, Pastor Robert touched my shoulder. "Teresa," he said, "I am sorry." I nodded. "So am I." Then Laura, Michael, Evelyn, and I walked out of the private room together. Behind us, Warren did not call my name. He could not. Not because he had nothing to say. Because for once, there were too many witnesses for him to lie freely. Outside, the cold night air hit my face. I had expected to feel victorious. I did not. I felt shaken, sad, almost hollow. But underneath all of that was something I had not felt in years. Space. Space around my lungs. Space inside my chest. Space where Warren's version of me used to live. Laura wrapped her coat around my shoulders, even though I had my own. Michael stood near the curb, wiping his face with one hand. Evelyn spoke quietly on her phone, already protecting the next step, and I stood under the restaurant lights looking at the dark windows, knowing Warren was still inside the room he built. Only now he was alone with the truth. People imagine the moment of truth as the ending. It is not. The truth is not a finish line. It is a door. And once you walk through it, you still have to live on the other side. That night, Laura drove me home. Michael followed in his own car. Evelyn had told me not to return to the house alone, not because she thought Warren would hurt me, but because men who lose control in public sometimes try to reclaim it in private. The house was dark when we arrived. Warren did not come home for hours. Laura wanted me to pack a bag and stay with her. "Mom, please," she said, standing in the kitchen with her coat still on. "Come home with me tonight." I looked around the kitchen. The oak cabinets I had polished for decades. The chipped tile near the stove. The window over the sink where I had watched Warren take phone calls in the cold. For years, that house had felt like my proof of stability. That night, it felt like a witness. "No," I said. "Not tonight." Michael stood near the doorway, pale and quiet. "Mom, I can stay." I looked at my son. His eyes were red. He had aged in one evening. "You don't have to guard me from your father?" His mouth tightened. "I don't know what I have to do anymore." That broke my heart more than I let him see. I walked to him and took his hand. "Tonight, you sleep. Tomorrow, we talk." He nodded, but he looked ashamed. Shame is heavy when it belongs to someone you love. You want to lift it from them, even when they earned a little of it. But I knew better now than to rescue everyone from every hard feeling. Some feelings teach. Warren came home just after midnight. Laura and Michael had gone, though reluctantly. Evelyn had called twice. The divorce filing had been submitted. The financial preservation request was moving. Marcus had already secured the next set of records. I was sitting at the kitchen table when Warren walked in. He looked older, not broken, just exposed. His tie was loose. His hair was no longer perfect. The man who entered that kitchen was not the polished husband from Ridgeway House. He was the man behind the curtain, furious that anyone had seen the ropes. He stopped when he saw me. "You ruined me," he said. "Not, I'm sorry. Not, how did we get here? Not even I loved you once. You ruined me." I looked at him across the kitchen. "No, Warren, I interrupted you." His face twisted. "You planned that?" "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." He stepped closer. "You had no right to humiliate me in front of my children." "Our children," I said. "And you invited them. You made me look like a criminal." I stood then. My knees hurt. My back hurt. My heart hurt. But my voice did not. "I showed people the door you built. They decided what it looked like." For a moment, I thought he would explode. Instead, he laughed. Bitterly. "You think this means you win?" "No," I said. I think it means I stop losing quietly. That was the last real conversation we had as husband and wife. The months that followed were not satisfying in the way people want stories to be satisfying. There was no instant punishment, no judge banging a gavel the next morning, no dramatic confession from Warren, no scene where Denise begged me for forgiveness. Real life moves slower than justice should. Warren denied nearly everything. He said the transfers were investment strategy. He said the Sarasota trips were business. He said Denise was a consultant. He said the electronic signature issue must have been an administrative error. He said the anniversary agreement was only a discussion draft. He said I had ambushed him. That part almost made me laugh. The man who planned a surprise divorce at an anniversary party accused me of ambush because I refused to be the only person surprised. But Evelyn and Marcus had prepared well. The records did not care about Warren's tone. They showed the money. They showed the timing. They showed the undervalued assets. They showed the Sarasota connection. They showed the agreement he planned to present. They showed the effort to create a smaller, cleaner version of the truth. The electronic signature matter became serious. I will not pretend I understood every legal detail. I did not, but I understood this much: Warren could no longer wave it away with a sigh and a polished sentence. People began asking questions he could not answer with charm. That was his real punishment. Not poverty, not prison, not public screaming. Questions. Warren had built his whole life on sounding like the final answer. Now he had to answer someone else. The settlement took time. It was not perfect. No divorce after 35 years can be perfect. You cannot split a life cleanly. There are always threads that tear. But it was fairer than the agreement Warren had planned to hand me beside a cake. Much fairer. I was allowed to remain in the house while the financial matters were reviewed. The court took the preservation of assets seriously. My inheritance documents mattered. My father's warning mattered. My mother's money mattered. And I mattered. That was the part I had to learn slowly. Laura came often during those months. Sometimes she brought soup. Sometimes she brought her daughters, who hugged me too carefully at first, as if I were a vase that had already cracked. One afternoon, my oldest granddaughter asked Grandma, "Are you sad I told her the truth?" "Yes. But sad is not the same as destroyed." She thought about that. Then she nodded like I had given her something she might need later. Michael took longer. He apologized the night after the party. Then again the next week. Then again, after he read more of the documents. "Mom, I let him make me doubt you," he said once, sitting on my back porch with his elbows on his knees. I looked at the hydrangeas. "Yes," I said. He flinched. I could have softened it. Old Teresa would have. New Teresa loved him enough not to. "But you came back to the truth when you saw it," I said. "That matters too." He cried then. My practical son. My polished son. Warren's son. Also mine. We rebuilt carefully. Not by pretending nothing happened, by saying the hard things and surviving them. As for Denise, she did not stay. That should not have surprised me, but it did. I suppose part of me had imagined her standing beside Warren defiantly, the way women in stories sometimes do when they believe they have won. But Denise had not wanted Warren stripped of money, reputation, and control. She had wanted the version of him he sold her. Once assets were frozen, questions spread, and his name lost its shine. Her devotion developed limits. Fresh starts apparently require clean financing. Warren moved into a rented townhouse north of Columbus. For a while, he tried to keep his old circles. Golf, business lunches, church events. But people were careful around him now. Not openly cruel, just cautious. That wounded him more than hatred would have. Hatred still centers a man. Caution removes the throne. I stayed in the house through the first stage of the divorce. Then, to everyone's surprise, I chose to sell it. Laura did not understand. "Mom, you fought for this house." "I fought for the truth of it," I said. "Not the walls." The house had my mother's money in its foundation, my children's laughter in its rooms, my fingerprints on every window latch and cabinet pull. But it also had Warren's voice in the hallway, his lies in the study, his phone calls on the porch, his performance in every polished surface. I did not want to grow old inside a museum of pain. So I sold it, not because Warren pushed me out, because I chose the door. I bought a smaller house near Lake Erie. Nothing grand, a pale blue cottage with a narrow porch, an old maple tree, and a kitchen just big enough for one woman to cook without feeling lonely. The first morning there, I woke before sunrise and walked to the water with a cup of coffee. The lake was gray and silver. The air smelled clean. No one needed breakfast. No one asked where his blue shirt was. No one corrected my memory. No one called me emotional for feeling the wind on my face. I stood there in my coat and cried. Not from grief alone, from relief. Later, I began teaching reading part-time at a community center. Children still smelled like crayons and hope. Their handwriting was still crooked. They still believed every story could turn if someone brave stepped in at the right time. I planted hydrangeas again, blue ones. I joined a women's group at the library. At first, I barely spoke. Then one day, a woman named Carol said her husband handled all the finances and she never understood any of it. The whole table laughed politely. I did not. I leaned forward and said, "Carol learned the numbers." She looked startled. Then she wrote it down. Warren and I finalized the divorce quietly compared to how he tried to begin it. He did not get the ending he wanted. Neither did I, if I am honest. No girl dreams of ending a 35-year marriage through lawyers' records and broken trust. But I got something better than the illusion I had been clinging to. I got myself back. People ask in different ways if I still loved him when it ended. The answer is painful. Yes. Some part of me loved the man he had been, or the man I believed he had been. I loved the father holding our babies. I loved the young husband in the rented hall. I loved the person who once cried when I helped him out of debt. But loving someone does not mean handing them the pen to write your final chapter. That is what Warren never understood. My better divorce was not better because it hurt him more. It was better because it saved me. It did not begin with revenge. It began with a woman in a quiet house deciding that silence was no longer the price of peace. Now when I stand on my porch in the morning and watch the lake change colors, I do not feel like Mrs. Warren Fuller. I feel like Teresa Caldwell Fuller. Teacher, mother, daughter, woman, still here, still learning, still allowed to begin again. After everything I lived through, I learned that betrayal does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it wears a nice suit. Sometimes it speaks gently. Sometimes as it calls itself concerned dignity or a difficult new chapter. But the truth has a sound of its own. And once you finally hear it, you cannot unhear it. For years, I thought keeping peace meant keeping the family together. I thought silence was maturity. I thought swallowing pain was part of being a good wife, a good mother, a good woman. But I was wrong. Peace that requires you to disappear is not peace. Love that asks you to stay small is not love. And a marriage that survives only because one person controls the story is not a marriage anymore. It is a stage. I want every woman listening, Especially those of us who have lived long enough to be underestimated to remember this, you are not invisible. You are not too old to start over. You are not foolish because you trusted someone, and you are not weak because it took you time to see the truth. Sometimes survival looks like silence at first. Sometimes courage begins with taking notes, saving papers, calling one person who believes you, and refusing to sign away your voice. My better divorce was never about destroying Warren. It was about refusing to let him destroy the woman I still was. It was about remembering my name, my history, my mind, my worth, and my right to walk into the next chapter with my head up. So tell me in the comments, if you were in Teresa's place, would you have confronted Warren privately? Or would you have let him walk onto the stage he built? I truly want to know what you think. And if this story touched something in you, please like this video, subscribe for more emotional family stories about truth, dignity, and second chances, and comment where you are watching from and what time it is there. Sometimes knowing we are not alone is the first step toward finding our strength again.